Board meeting of California Architects Board. And I would like, time now is exactly 10 o'clock. I would like ask Secretary Gladstone to call the roll.
Brett. I think he's muted. There he is.
Roll call. Jen Fink.
Here.
Sunny Ward.
Present. Here.
Brett Gladstone here. Ronald Jones.
Present.
Mitra Kanani.
Here.
Sylvia Kwan.
Here.
Ebony Lewis not attending today? Okay, not attending. Robert Pearman. Nielsa Serrano.
Nielsa will be late.
Late. Okay, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Secretary. Okay, as usual, there's some procedural remarks we have to deliver to the meeting. This meeting is webcast, pursuant to the government code section 11133. This meeting will be held by telephone conference with no physical public locations. We also invited and welcomed John Ruzinski, our chair for Landscape Architect Technical Committee, to join us. About the voting, all motions and the seconds will be repeated via sound, voice, or record, and votes on all motions will be taken by roll call. Joining us in our public attendance include Mark Christian. Mark has been the director for government relations at AIA California for nearly 2 decades. And he's a unique public member to us. And for all these years, he's retiring from AIA California this year.
Oh.
And this will be his last meeting in his current capacity. So I think this is an opportunity for us to share our thoughts and our gratefulness and appreciation for all these years, his participation. So the board decided to award Mark Christian a commendation for his contribution with the following text. I don't have a physical commendation Laura has, but I can read the text. Mark, for your outstanding contributions, see if we could turn on, I don't know, Mark, you have a camera or not? If you have a camera, I appreciate if you can turn on your camera and moderate if you could show Mark. Unique contributions to the California Architects Board while working as the American Institute Architects California's Director of Government Relations since 1999. You have been a tremendous advocate for the architecture profession and have been an invaluable source of expertise to the board and its staff. Thank you for your exceptional performance, and we want to recognize your contribution. Okay, actually following that is a public comment period. If Mark, you have any words to share, we'll love to hear from you, and so as other public members. So moderator, we can open to public comment.
This is a moderator. I actually promoted Mark up if he'd like to go ahead and make his comments, and then I'll open up public comment for the rest of the public.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. President Feng, members of the California Architects Board, thank you. I don't have anything prepared. I probably should have, but it has been an honor. I think the 24 years I have been with AIA California, working with this body, certainly much more the last 7 years. But working with the fantastic members over the years, the staff led by Steve Sands, Doug McCauley, and currently by Laura Zuniga, whom I've known my all 24 years here. It has been an honor. It has been a privilege. It has been a learning experience. I think anytime you have a job where you end the day knowing more than you knew when you started the day, you're fortunate. And I've had many years of fortune in that regard. Becoming friends with many of the members. It has been, I'm very lucky. President Feng, thank you for this. The members of the board, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I've enjoyed it, and I will still lurk from the sidelines and watch because I like it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we can open up for public comment period.
Right. This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests.
Tian, it's Laura. If I can just say while we're waiting, I just want to thank Mark for everything. It's been such a pleasure to work with you. As you said, I've known you, I think, almost my entire career with DCA, with the board, and it's just been wonderful. So I appreciate it very much. Thank you for everything you do and everything you've done.
And may I also interject while we wait?
Yes.
Mark, I don't know about you learning from us, but we certainly learn from you. You sort of break down all of the issues that AIACC, as well as our board, mutually shared. And in order to demystify the issues, you've been able to do it quite well. I really consider you a member of the member of the board sitting out there the whole time. I never thought of you as that public with a little p. I thought of you as public with the capital P. I'm really going to miss you because I rely on your wise counsel to deliberate on the many issues that we've gone over during these past 8 years that I've been on the board. So I want to show my appreciation by thanking you and hope to continue seeing you.
All right. This is the moderator. Seeing no requests for comment, would you like me to close that Q&A feature?
Yes, please. Okay. Agenda item D, public comment on items not on the agenda. I just want to make sure if any public members has any concerns and suggestions, board members keep in mind during this period, board members are not engaged in discussions with the public members, but we can note it and put these suggestions for future meetings potentially. So with that said, we have to open up for agenda D, public comment period again.
All right. This is the moderator. At the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment for items not on the agenda, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, and this is the moderator. Seeing no requests for public comment, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Next agenda item is review and a possible action on the board meeting minutes of last meeting. You can find the meeting minutes on page 15.
John, this is Laura. Sorry to interrupt. I think we skipped over the update from the Department of Consumer Affairs. Item C.
You could move forward, but on the agenda. Okay. Yeah.
So do you want to finish the minutes, or do you want and then go to that item?
If is the DCA staff here with us? If they are, I reverse my order to.
They are. It's it'll be Mary Kate Jones from DCA.
Oh, no wonder. Okay, I did not. So, okay, so instead of Brian,
Right.
Mary, sorry, I moved too fast to D. We want to restore the original agenda to item C, update from DCA. And moderator here, we can turn on microphone over there.
No problem. Thank you. Can y'all hear me? Beautiful. Okay. Thank you so much for allowing me to provide the Department of Consumer Affairs update today. Good morning, board members. My name is Mary Kate Cruz Jones, and I'll be providing this update on behalf of the Executive Office. So we'll start with COVID-19 safety measures. So though legislation has passed allowing more remote meetings, we are reminding boards that choose to hold in-person meetings of the safety measures, best practices, and recommendations for holding public meetings. When planning for upcoming meetings, please remember all board and bureau members and staff are expected to follow the state and local health public guidelines that apply in the area where the meetings are held. Face coverings are strongly recommended for all board members and staff at meetings. The California Department of Public Health strongly recommends that individuals continue to mask in indoor settings. And please post face covering guidance signage at your meeting check-in or entrance. In terms of things that DCA has recently done, on August 10th, DCA held a brown bag meeting on the topic of social media. The presentation included an overview of social media best practices, content examples, security, and more. A copy of the presentation was provided to participants, and if you have any questions or requests related to social media, please feel free to contact DCA's Deputy Director of Communications, Monica Vargas. DCA takes a proactive and strategic approach to the recruitment and training of its skilled and diverse workforce. And to achieve this approach, DCA is updating its annual workforce and succession plan. As part of this process, DCA recently requested that board and bureau leaders complete a workforce survey. Responses will be used with other information about DCA's workforce to inform decisions that align and support DCA's new strategic plan. Further, this process facilitates meeting Cal HR's requirement that all state organizations with civil service employees maintain current workforce and succession plans. And I just want to provide a quick update now on new DCA staff. DCA is pleased to announce that Olivia Trejo has been appointed as DCA's Chief of the Office of Human Resources as of August 1st. Olivia has over 22 years of experience in human resources in state government, and the past 9 years she's been with DCA's OHR. She began her career in 2000 at the Department of Insurance, and then she worked with the Department of Real Estate, and most recently, she was DCA's Assistant Human Resources Chief for nearly 5 years. Taylor Schick was appointed as DCA's Chief Fiscal Officer in July. Taylor has more than 16 years of state experience, all with DCA. Taylor began his career in 2006 as a budget analyst, and most recently as the DCA Budget Officer. As the new DCA's Chief Fiscal Officer, DCA will lead the dedicated accounting and budget teams. And lastly, the governor recently appointed a new Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations, Melissa Gear. She will be joining the department in October and brings a wealth of experience. She previously served as the Chief Deputy Legislative Director at the Department of Insurance since 2014, and she's also served at the California State Teachers Retirement System, California Attorney General's Office, and at the Legislative Analyst's Office. She also earned a Master's of Public Health and Administration degree from New York University, and we look forward to her joining the department and assisting all of our boards and bureaus. And I'm sure you all will be excited to meet her soon too. My last update here is regarding BMOT. Board members are required to complete BMOT within 1 year of appointment or reappointment. That final training of 2022 is coming up and will be offered on October 12th. Members can register through DCA's learning management system. Just as a quick reminder, BMOT is required for newly appointed or reappointed members, but is also available as a refresher for anyone who would like to join us, including executive officers. So please reach out to Board and Bureau Relations with any questions that you may have. And that will conclude my update today. And just as a quick reminder, DCA is always here to help. So if there's anything that we could do to assist you with, please feel free to reach out, and we'd love to be there for you all. Thank you so much. I'll hand it back to you, President.
This is the moderator, Board President. I think you may be muted.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Mary Kate, for your excellent updates. Any members has any questions, inquiries to Mary Kate while she's still with us? I have a suggestion for both Laura and Mary Kate. Maybe at some point, if all possible, we can see virtually in person of the new appointees, so we know we feel more connected that way. I don't know if it's feasible given their schedule.
This is Laura. Sure. So like for the next board meeting, if we can try to arrange that. Okay.
For example, we work closely with the Chief of Human Resource every year. Would be very helpful if we know the new appointees.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I'd be happy to bring that back to the executive office. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Any member has any questions? Thank you very much again, Mary Kate, and hope to see you again. Okay, now we move to next agenda, which is review and take action on the meeting minutes of last meeting.
Mr. President, we do need to take public comment after the
that's right.
DCA report item.
No.
This is the moderator. At the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on agenda item C, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Now, this is a third time attempt to move to agenda number E, and any members has any comment or want to move forward with a motion?
I'll move to approve the minutes from the June 8th meeting.
Okay, so we are moved. Any second?
Second, Ron Jones.
Ron Jones, second. Any discussions? If not, Mr. Secretary, we can take the vote.
Okay, on the vote.
Mr. President, this is Michael. We need to take public comment on the motion.
Thank you, Michael.
This is the moderator. At the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment for agenda item E, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, this is the moderator. Seeing no requests for public comment, would you like me to close that Q&A feature?
Yes, please.
Mr. President, this is John Rashinsky. I do have a correction.
Okay. Go ahead, John.
Okay, it's under item H, update on committees. And on page 6, the second paragraph, the last sentence should be corrected to read, and I will quote, LATC voted to appoint Mr. John Rashinsky to the CLARB work group. And the background on that is that the work of the CLARB group has actually not commenced yet. We are still waiting to hear from them when that does occur. And at that point in time, I will be participating.
Should I modify my,
John, what is the correction? Is the adding the sentence or correct the words?
Yeah.
This is Laura. I think I've got John's change.
Okay. So I'll modify my motion to include the change made by.
This is Michael. Just to simplify things, does anyone object to that change? Hearing none, you can proceed.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, we can vote now.
Okay, this is a vote to approve the minutes.
Yes.
Tian Feng,
Yes.
Sunny Ward,
Yes.
Brett Gladstone, yes. Ronald Jones,
Yes.
Mitra Kanani,
Yes.
Sylvia Kwan,
Yes.
Robert Perlman.
Yeah.
Is Niels Serrano here yet? Not here.
No.
Okay, we have a majority, Mr. President.
Thank you. Next, moderator, could you do a logistic check? Is our special guest presenter, Keelan Kaiser, here?
Yes, this is the moderator. I promoted them up to a panelist, so they should be able to unmute and turn on their microphone.
Okay, so next agenda is item F, presentation from California Baptist University College of Architecture. And it was supposed to be an in-person meeting, and the college was kind enough hosting us, but it turns out we have logistic limitations. And so we now revert to a virtual meeting, but the college was kind enough to give us a presentation about their program, which is an outstanding program. And so with that said, I'd like to welcome Professor Keelan Kaiser, who is the director of the architecture program and the professor of the architecture at school. Professor Kaiser, please turn on your camera and take over the microphone.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm joined by the Dean of the College of Architecture, Visual Art and Design, Dean Robertson, Mark Robertson. And we've just got a short presentation to share with you about what's going on at the California Baptist University College of Architecture. So, Dean Robertson.
Yeah, thank you for allowing us to host you. I wish you guys could all be here today. We'd love to have you here in our building and show you around, let you see what we're doing here. So if any of you happen to wander past Riverside in your travels, come on by, stop in. We'd love to meet you and show you what we're doing. I was thinking that back in 2011, when I came to CBU and to Riverside, there were about 4.5 million people in the Inland Empire, however you define that exactly, but about 4.5 million people in 0 architecture programs officially in the Inland Empire. And so CBU, which was about 5,000 students at the time, now close to 12, but they had a real interest in expanding into professional programs and particularly into architecture because they had determined through research, polling surveys that there was a real demand for an architecture program here in the Inland Empire. And so I spent a year sort of researching programs across the country and talking to anyone who would pick up the phone and asking them, what's working for you? What are you doing? What do you wish you could be doing? What I found was that there were a lot of people who were really jealous of the opportunity that we had here to start something new without baggage, without history, I talked to a friend of mine over at USC and he was like, yeah, we've had the same faculty in the same office for 40 years. I mean, we can't change anything. I mean, it's so hard to change. So people were really jealous of this opportunity. And I realized what a kind of special and precious thing that it was, that we had an opportunity to create a program the way we really believed it should be for the future, not for the last 100 years, but for the next 100 years. And so that comes out in a lot of ways. We integrate a lot of our things together. We try to really combine technical expertise and design knowledge instead of falling into one of those camps. And as we go, Keelan's going to kind of give you some details about how this has worked and what an amazing ride it's been as we've grown not only in numbers but in quality and in awards and in accreditation and a lot of other things that we're really happy about. But one of the things that really makes me happy is when architects call me or I run into them and they say, you know what? We really just want to hire CBU students from now on. I didn't go to CBU, I didn't graduate from CBU, but your students seem so much more prepared than students I'm hiring from other places. And have had people tell me, don't use my name. I don't want anybody to know I'm telling you this, but I just want to hire your students from now on. How many students can you send me? And so that really warms my heart that we're sending students into the profession who are well prepared for what they're doing and what they're about to embark upon. So Keelan has a few slides he wants to go through to tell you guys some things in detail. Keelan's our program director for architecture and responsible for a lot of what's going to appear on these slides. So Keelan.
Yeah, so I came to the school about 5 years ago after teaching in the Chicago area for about 20 years prior. So this is the beginning of my 6th year. I think we had about 80 students when I came. We've got about 250, just under 250 students now. We're almost at what I would call full capacity, so we should be in the 250 to 275 range. Still a fairly small community of learners. We're trying to keep it that way. The university itself continues to expand into different areas, but architecture was started in 2012 and is starting to kind of reach its plateau now at this point of development. This is our 10th anniversary of the program. We were fully accredited back in 2018. So we've been accredited with the NAB since for 4 years now, and our current term of accreditation is through 2029. We just had a follow-up accreditation visit last year. So we're fully accredited with the NAB and moving forward in that. We have 1 licensee already at this point. We've had 5 graduating classes. So we've got 1 student, 1 recent graduate that's a licensee in the state of California, several in the pipeline, of course, taking their exams and whatnot. And we have a couple students already teaching at the university level. So we're pretty excited about the performance and the abilities that our students, our graduates are bringing to the marketplace. For a while, we were at the top of all of the ARE pass rates for the state of California and actually for the western half of the United States for about a year. And now we've got more students testing, so I guess it's evening out. Our first couple of students were doing really great. Now it's evening out a little bit, but we're still in the top 25% of ARE pass rates for our graduates. So we're really proud about that. We're a serious school about teaching students how to become practitioners. There's a lot of valuable things that can be learned at the other schools in the region, of course, and we don't we're not really competing with anybody. We're kind of in an island here, so to speak, in the Inland Empire. So we're not really focused on trying to compete with anybody. What we're trying to do is make sure that our graduates are ready to practice and to make the built environment better and increase the quality of life for people in the region. So we're really excited about how our students are contributing to that. We have an accelerated 5-year MARC. It's one of only a few in the country. I think there's about 12 or 13 schools around the country that have experimented with the accelerated 5-year programs. That's the way that our program is set up. I say 5 years plus because it's really about 5.5 years worth of credits crammed into 5 years. But the benefit for the student and the family is it's 1 less year of tuition and room and board and 1 year extra of earning potential. So it's a huge win-win for a student to be able to finish in that kind of time frame. And I'd say about 90% of our students finish within that 5-year time frame. Life happens. Students take 6 years or 7 years sometimes, but for the most part, in that high 90s range, maybe just a little bit over 90% of our students completing in 5 years. So we feel really strongly about that. We do have about 60 graduates out in the workplace currently with our first 5 years of graduates. Next slide is just the accreditation. We had our last accreditation visit, which was all online, as you can imagine, last year. And we can go to the next slide. We have a great, outstanding, diverse faculty. We are an HSI university, Hispanic serving institution, so we do have a very diverse student body. A lot of first generation college students in our program. So in a way, it's a great university for first generation college students because it's traditionally a teaching university more than a research university that actually helps students that are coming in without a lot of family and experience with higher education. So the mentoring aspect and the teaching focus of the university plays a big role in our program here as well. But we're still doing a lot of scholarship. We just had 2 books published among our faculty this year, and a number of us participating in conferences all over the country in a number of different venues: history, technology, design, all of the above. Just a short slideshow there, or a slide of our current faculty. We can go to the next slide. One thing that makes us really unique and really different, this isn't going to be very visible, I think, unless you've got a big screen, but we have 5 learning objectives, some of which will look similar to what you might see at other architecture schools, except for number 3, perhaps. And number 3 is probably our program distinctive. We call it agape, care, and empathy. It's a learning objective that we want all of our students to graduate with. Our best students are going to graduate with that learning objective, and our medium and lowest performing students are still going to graduate with that. We call them SLOs, student learning outcomes. And my screen's pretty small too, so I'm gonna read it because it's worth sharing. So this is a learning objective which you can do at a faith-based school because we are not excluding faith or excluding the personal faith conviction part of the human person. We're not obliged to exclude that at a faith-based university. In fact, it's central to what we do. And so it's a central part of our program. Students genuinely desire the good of others and have multiple experiences with and demonstrate a high level of empathy when solving design problems and working with community constituencies. And that's part of what we call the agape, which is just another word for love, loving others, loving our neighbors as ourselves, so to speak. Love, care, and empathy is a central part of our program. It's not the first thing you think about when you think about architecture schools, but it's the first thing that we think about when we are talking about our school. So very different, very unique. It's not for everybody. Just like I'm from Nebraska, the state motto, one of the state slogans is Nebraska, it's not for everybody. This isn't for everybody either, but it's for the people that are looking for that kind of institution, that kind of experience, that kind of community. It's perfect for them, and our students are super excited about it. If you talk to any of our students, you're going to find that the student experience here is outstanding, so we're really proud about that. Next slide. And we're getting close to the end here. We've had a number of students winning awards around the country. We had a top 10 Coat Award winning student last year in 2021, who's now working at SOM in New York. And next slide, we've had students placing in the Metropolis Top 100 this past year. We have a slide on, we have a spread on Dazine magazine. They do school shows. We've had 3 years worth of school shows. If you Google Dazine CBU architecture, you'll see some examples of our students' work. If you're interested in seeing the kind of things that they're doing and the types of things they're writing about have a lot of connection to our mission, of course. And just this past year, one of our students won a $10,000 scholarship through the Sarah, New York organization, the Andrew Mellon Scholarship, which is a memorial scholarship for a architecture student that was killed in an accident in New York State, and his parents set up a foundation for him. And our student, out of 600 applicants around the country, was the winner of that scholarship this past year. So just a few pride points for you. And then I think the last slide, just a collection of the different places where our students are working. A lot of regional firms are hiring our students, of course, Renault Clark in the area, PBK, HMC. I don't have a slide of theirs on there or a logo of theirs. We also are starting to get students out into the Los Angeles market, of course, with Gruen, SOM, Gensler, DLR. We have students working at the Populous office, sports venue office in Kansas City. And we've also recently been sending some of our students who decide to opt out of the graduate program here, but take graduate studies elsewhere. We've been sending students around the country here for the last couple of years, one to Notre Dame, Clemson, University of Colorado, Denver. We've had 2 students go to SciArc for graduate school. So really proud of the diaspora of the CBU graduates moving on and kind of helping the rest of the university, or help the rest of the country know a little bit more about our school. So thank you for your time. Dean Robertson might have a few closing comments. We can take questions also.
Didn't have any closing comments prepared, but I was serious about the next time you're around Riverside. We would love to meet you and have you come by and see what we're doing here. Some of our
the run
students
check,
are
make sure that happens. But we will have a few questions, but I like yield my time to my other board member first in case they have questions.
Mr. Robert Perriman, I was wondering about your students and their, internship, so to speak, at architectural firms. Are they able to get engagements locally in Riverside County, at least pre-pandemic, or do they have to come into LA County, et cetera, to get some work assignments?
We're spending a lot of our students are spending time here in Riverside area and inland California. Most of our students are from within a fairly tight radius, and because they're first generation college students, what I've learned is that for the most part, they want to stay close to home and impact their communities. And so we're really encouraging that. And but most of our students have been able to find internships over the last couple of years, even during the pandemic. So we've been very successful. We've also introduced an international virtual internship option for our students too, which has been kind of an interesting program we just piloted this year, we had 3 students pilot that this year, which has been really neat. A student worked with a firm in Vietnam, another one in Rwanda, and blanking on the third location, but international in scope. So a lot of opportunities. After about our 3rd year, our students are really ready to start doing internships like you would expect at most architecture schools.
Hi. So I have actually a question about the actual degree program, because I think you said it was of course, accelerated master's program being done in 5 years or so. But then you also mentioned some students going somewhere else to finish their master's. So is there not a B.Arch or BA option at all then?
There is. Most of our students enter into the M.Arch program at entry. It's a 168 credit hour program, which is the minimum number of credits that NAB requires for accreditation for the master's level degree. Most of our students end up with more than 168. They may end up with 170 or 175, but 168 is the minimum. At the fall semester of the senior year, students can opt out of the master's program and choose to graduate with only the BA degree. So we have an opt-out, kind of an off-ramp, and that serves people that want to go to graduate school elsewhere or who have decided that they want to take a break and work for a little while and come back, maybe save up for college for their master's degree. Because it's a master's level degree, the Cal Grant turns off for the final year. So that's a little bit of a financial hit for some of our students. So some of them are off ramping for a period of time and coming back.
Interesting. Okay, so you basically are like, I went to Berkeley and they had the 4+2. So you graduate with a non-accredited degree, then it was 2 years more. So it's interesting that you're able to, as you said, cram 5.5 years or whatever into 5 years. I think you're absolutely right about that. And by the way, I'm with DLR Group. I just retired recently, and I know we have a Riverside office, so I hope we have some of your students there.
We do. I think we've got a couple in the LA office and a couple here in Riverside. Yep.
Great. Well, I'm going to check on them.
Thank you. Alex Gordon is at our LA office, and Kate Rias are coming to mind immediately here in the Riverside office.
Great. Well, I look forward to finding out more about your graduates.
Great.
I'm sure it'll be all positive.
Thank you. Thank you very
Mr.
much.
Kaiser, this is Ron Jones. I want to commend you and for a fantastic presentation, and to applaud the accomplished efforts that you have at the school. You mentioned your success rate, and I'm curious as to whether or not you guys have a professional practice curriculum, and do you assign the success of your success rate to the sort of curriculum in general?
Very much so. One of the innovations that Mark had when he set up the original curriculum was to include 2 classes in business as part of the preparation for professional practice. And so part of our required classes include 2 business classes, one on small business practices and one on project management from a business perspective. And then we also have 2 professional practice classes in the curriculum, one at the undergraduate level and one at the graduate level, as a completion of that 12-unit cluster.
Great, thank you.
I have Mitra, and then followed by Sunny.
Keelan, thank you very much for the presentation. Keelan and I know each other from years ago, serving on the ACSA Board of Directors. I really appreciated your presentation today. I learned a lot about what you're doing, and it's great. Yeah, you are very isolated in that area, and you're doing a great job considering being so isolated. My only question is, are you considering IPAL for your program at all?
We have talked about IPAL quite a bit. There's a lot of schools doing IPAL. We don't feel like we really want to or need to compete with IPAL schools, and so for part of our distinction, I think is better for us to not do IPAL. But IPAL is a great program and is generating some graduates that are really succeeding as a result of taking those programs too. So we don't have any plans to do that at this time.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you very much. It was a great presentation. Thank you.
Congratulations on your recent publication. That looks fantastic.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Sunny?
Unmuted. Yeah, thank you.
So
yes. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Sunny. I thought you lower your hand.
Okay. No. I just lowered it as I was speaking. I also just wanted to commend you guys and also to add on to Ron and Mitra. I think your ARE scores are clearly reflective of the focus on the professional practice aspect. And Mitra's question was mine as well, because it would be fascinating for me to sort of see the overlap of the focus on professional practice with the IPAL, and to see what that would do to your pass rates compared to some of the other universities in the state. I think that would be fascinating to see. I also wanted to just mention, Sylvia, your 4-year degree was accredited. It just wasn't professional. So I wanted to make sure we corrected that on the record, right? Your 4-year degree was accredited. It just wasn't the professional 5-year degree. It was the 4-year accredited degree.
Well, hate to disagree, but in NCARB speak, they do not recognize that as an accredited degree. It's really weird how they talk about it.
Not a NAB degree.
NCARB, but as far as like accreditation, it's an accredited school.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think technically it's considered a regionally accredited degree. It's just not a professional accredited, specialized accredited degree.
I'll take it. I'll take that.
I think that's important. I think that's important to correct.
I'm a 4+2. I'm a 4+2 graduate, as I think Marcus as well. So
okay.
Yeah.
So all right. Well, see,
It's a great degree and a great path, I guess, is the point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would also say that just on the internship question, you know, a student, and we really try to mentor or coach our students. For, you know, our agenda is to get our students into practice, and if they're going to be in practice, the 90% of practitioners end up as a sole practitioner at some point in their career. They've got to be license ready, and they've got to be license eligible. So we really stress that. We probably stress it more than a typical architecture school might. We don't kind of shy away from it. We treat it as a serious part of professional education. We're both licensed architects. I'm licensed in the state of Illinois, but we're both licensed architects. We're, you know, and half of our faculty are licensed architects. So it's important. If a student is really creative, and we try to encourage this and coach this, if students are really creative, they can get 3 months of internship in the senior year, in the junior year, 3 months in the senior year. They really technically only have about 1.5 years of NCARB left to finish out their certification. So, you know, hypothetically, a student could be ready to test at year 7.5. So but students don't know that unless they're coached. They eat what we feed them. So we try to give them that kind of insight, while also talking about the importance of leadership, and that may be alternative careers, that may be other things too. Those are important too, but the priority is professional development.
I have a couple of questions for both of you. Start with the students' body. Your program accepts transfer students from a local community college?
We do, pretty aggressively, actually. We probably bring in 15 students a year out of a typical freshman class of 60 every year, with about 50 of those continuing on to the second year. We'll bring in students from all of the regional community colleges that have architecture programs: San Bernardino, Mount Sac, Citrus, East LA, a lot of the regional schools we've worked with. Mark set up those relationships very, very early. We've been really working on that as a significant pipeline for underrepresented student populations, to make sure that they have access to professional education. So we've been really focused on that.
Okay. And would you say your students mostly from local communities, or from Southern California, or are you aggressively seeking for international students, for example? What is your business policy on that?
Yeah, most of our students are from the region. Within 500 miles is a typical kind of radius for this particular university's recruiting efforts. We have had some interest from around the country. It's because of the faith-based nature of the school. Students that are looking for that kind of context to study at the collegiate level have you know, just a few options to choose from if they're specifically looking for a Christian school in particular. So we're, you know, we've got students from Virginia, we've got students from Florida, from Colorado, Oregon, Missouri, Texas. We've got students from all over. We do have a few international students, but because we're a new school, we don't have as much visibility as you know, established programs have. So it's a little bit more difficult for them to find us. But we do have, we had a student from Taiwan who started with us, and then the pandemic happened and he went home. But we do have a couple Indian students working with us now. And so we are, the university does have a fairly significant Pacific Rim presence in its other programs on campus. And so architecture is kind of following in the wake of those other efforts and slowly getting some attention.
I thought your 5 years MArch program is really interesting. You mentioned this is actually a standard practice, just not every university. Is this a standard name called the Accelerated MArch 5 years? Other school called the same name and same program?
I'm sorry, Tian, I'm not sure I understood the question.
So the 5 years program you name, I think you call it accelerated MARC, is it? You also mentioned that there are a few other schools in the country has a similar program. Is this a standard name? In other words, it's accelerated 5 years?
Accelerated is an adjective that I add to it to help explain what a 5-year MARC means. Because most people don't really get that because it's a newer degree type. It's not new. It's been around for about, I don't know, 12 or 15 years now. So, but it's not widely, it hasn't been widely embraced by every school. But new schools are typically looking at the MARC as an option, the 5-year MARC as an option.
NAB refers to it as a single institution MARC, which is, you come in as a freshman, you stay in that same place for 5 years, and you get a master's at the end. So it's something they had introduced as an option just before we started this program. And one of our goals is to get our students kind of through college and into the profession as quickly as possible for their benefit. And we thought this was a perfect model for us to.
That's what I'm thinking.
Follow.
That's why some programs call for 4+3, for example. That is an entire 2 years additional year compared to your 5 years program.
Yeah, 4+3 would be a typical for a program that focuses all of their work in the graduate part of the program, that brings in 4-year students that maybe from different majors, and then gives accelerated or advanced standing perhaps to students that come in with an architecture degree. So it may still end up doing a 2-year program or a 2.5-year program, even though on paper it's a 3-year program. So there's just a lot of different versions of the accredited degrees out there. This is the one that we've embraced.
This creates, very nice alternative paths for students who want a master's degree but prefer, invest less time and financial resource. So this is a great path. Anyway, any other members? Oh, I still see a hand. Mitra and Sunny, are you old hand or new hands?
I just want to, in fact, respond to your question, Tian. 5-year master's is not a new concept, and it started with Texas Tech almost 20 years ago. With regards to 4+3 that you mentioned, the 3, it only happens when the individual, the applicant student, is coming from another discipline, not a BA in architecture. And for those who are switching majors, it becomes a 3-year MARC. And it leads to an accredited program, again, accredited degree. Just wanted to clarify.
For most of professional degrees, 5 years already just for BArch. So that's why I'm curious to know more about why the same 5 years you get MArch. So,
exactly.
Anyway,
but in the world of changes today and fast pace that we are living, 5 years, 5 years BArch is an underestimate to the amount of the load and effort that goes into this degree. That's why a lot of even those public universities, if they had the means to do it, and not so much entanglement with the changes, they would have preferred to change their 5-year to an MArch rather than a BArch.
And some universities did exactly that across the country. They had a BArch and just added some units and changed the path to an MArch.
Okay. Well, this is the first I heard of it.
So Tian, I thought I would just take a moment to sort of clarify things a little bit, because this will eventually come in front of the board. But I chair the PQC Professional Qualifications Committee. Tian sits on that with me as well, and we're currently in the process of updating the California, our current California Architects Board's experience and credit for school. And so this conversation kind of goes back to the comment about the regional credit for a accredited 4-year school in California. So to remind everyone, in California, we have multiple pathways for licensure. And so that would be where the regional comment sort of falls under, that for every year of accredited architectural education that someone has, if they wanted to go the California route only, so not NCARB, the 4-year program would count for 4 years. And this particular 5-year plus program, even though the students may have more credits and equal to what someone who got in a 5-year program plus a, say, 4-quarter MARC program somewhere else, under the California regional path of licensure, would only receive 5 years of credit. That's different from NCARB. So they would receive, and Sylvia, you may, and I don't know as much about NCARB. I just happen to be sort of cued into the California path. So anyway, this is a little bit in the weeds, but just to sort of point out and clarify to everyone that we are a multiple path state. We don't only follow NCARB. We have a California pathway, which can be done in many ways, that accepts licensure in a different way than NCARB.
You mentioned, I think you referred to NAB.
The NAB accreditation of a professional, a professional versus a non-professional school. They can both be accredited.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dean, and thank you, Kaiser, Professor Kaiser. And yes, we want to make one of these meetings on your campus for sure. And we also want to hear back from you from time to time, because outreach to educational institute is one of our strategic goals, to understand how the education feeds the California architects in short term and long term. Thank you again.
Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and congratulations on a great program.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we also need a public comment period as well. Moderator, if you could open a public comment period.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. It looks like I do have one individual with a raised hand. Carrie Bernstein, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Hello.
All right, and you are unmuted.
Great. Are our guests still with us? Or did they leave?
Oh, no, it looks like they may have left.
Because my question was for them.
Oh.
I don't know if board staff can reach out and ask if they rejoin the call.
Yeah, I mean, I have a comment about one of the snide comments they made about other schools not teaching empathy and ethics. I was a professor of ethics and in a secular institution, and yes, indeed, ethics are taught. So I didn't appreciate saying only religious-based schools do that. The second is Cal Baptist University posts their very explicitly all the 10 aspects of their beliefs and where those beliefs come from, with great footnotes and citations from the text. Some of those beliefs are in direct conflict with AIA values and other values. And so my question for them was, how are they preparing their students to enter into an architecture profession that as a profession rebuts many of their own educational values?
Can you just specify one or two, because I'm not clear what those might be?
So if you go to the Cal Baptist website and you click on Baptist Faith Message Contents, under number 15, it says, called The Christian and the Social Order. It equates homosexuality as a sexual immorality along with adultery and pornography.
Really?
And then under the family, this is a little different because this could stay within the bounds of the family, that the wife is supposed to submit graciously to the servant leadership of her husband. So, there's potentially no conflict between that, but these are not aligned with many of the AIA values. And so my question was simply, how do they prepare their students to enter into a profession which holds very different values than the values that they're taught? And what could an employer expect, from someone who has those values?
Wow. Yeah, that's one thing I noticed is that there wasn't really much discussion about the religious aspect. They were trying to equate the architectural program to other architectural programs, and they pretty much just stayed away from the religious aspects, except for like an overarching set of values. So yeah, that would definitely be an interesting question if they were to come back.
I mean, they're of course fully entitled to believe anything they want, and that's what's great about our country. But like I said, when they're preparing professionals to come into a profession that has different values, how do they do that? Was just my.
May I ask a question? Did you know, Speaker, if they also discourage Muslims and Jewish people from matriculating there, or
secular people,
or secular people, how those people are treated? Do you know anything about that?
This is Michael, your legal counsel. Public comment is supposed to be a forum for individuals to make comments. I would recommend that board members not engage in these kind of discussions with public commenters. Thank you for your comments.
Okay.
All right, and this is the moderator. Appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. So, public member Carrie, I will work with staff, pass the message to the university. But in the context of our invitation, we will focus on the education requirement established by NAB. So they are the NAB accredited degrees. So we are more focused on these measurable goals that they have achieved through NAB accreditation process. But we will pass your comments to the universities. Thank you. With that said, we are moving to next agenda, which is has a report from our DCS office on budget. Is DCA staff here available, ready for take on this item G?
Yes, thank you, President Peng. And good morning. My name is Harmony DiFilippo, and I am the budget analyst with DCA. I would like to thank you all for the opportunity to present today. I'm going to provide the board with an update on the budget, and I will be speaking to agenda item G and the documents included. I would like to start with a quick overview of the fiscal year 21-22 FM12 expenditure projections, which is split between pages 40 and 41. This report includes 2020-21 actual expenditures compared to 21-22 budgeted and projected expenditures. Over this two-year period, cost increased partially due to the board's business modernization efforts. For fiscal year 21-22, the board is projected to spend approximately $4,167,000, of which $2,355,000 is expended on personal service costs and $1,837,000 on operating expenses and equipment, OE&E. The next slide is your 21-22 FM12 revenue projections on page 43. This report includes 21-22 FM12 budgeted and projected revenue, which I will go over further in the next slide. Next, I will review the fund condition, which is page 44. The attached fund condition statement is based on the 21-22 Budget Act and has been updated with fiscal month 12 projections. This also includes 2021 prior year actual revenues and expenditures, as well as out years, giving you a 5-year view. I will start with the first section of revenues. The board began 2020-21 with a fund balance of $5,706,000 and collected $3,020,000 in revenues, with $312,000 from initial license fees, $2,611,000 from license renewals, and $97,000 was collected from issuance of citations, fines, delinquent fees, and other revenue. For 21-22, the board projects revenues at $4,362,000, with approximately $366,000 projected from initial license fees and $3,904,000 from renewal fees and $92,000 from the issuance of citations, fines, delinquent fees, and other revenue. You will notice revenue is projected with the historical high-low trend in the out years. The next section is expenditures. The board's 21-22 current year expenditures are projected based on FM12 at $4,157,000, which includes reimbursements to the board shown on the revenue projections on page 43. The fund condition projects outgoing expenditures with a 3% growth factor increase per year. The fund condition shows the board fully expending its appropriation ongoing. I also included an estimate for future business modernization costs, BizMod, in budget year +1 and budget year +2. Please note, these are just an estimate and may change. To the extent the board does not fully expend its appropriation, any savings remain in the board's fund, which helps support the reserve balance. The board notes future legislation or other events could require the board to request additional resources through the annual budget process, which would increase cost pressures on the fund. The last section is the fund balance reserve. The fund balance reserve is the amount of funds remaining at the end of any given fiscal year. The board's funds have a statutory fund balance limit of 24 months, but typically 3 to 6 months is considered sufficient. I would also like to provide some additional information for the board on a structural imbalance. A typical structure imbalance occurs when projected revenues are less than the anticipated expenditures. The board's fund balance reserve is currently declining due to a structural imbalance. This is due to increased expenditures outweighing the revenue. The 21-22 structural imbalance is projected at approximately $316,000 and is anticipated to increase and accelerate in the 22-23 budget year, which will cause the fund to become insolvent in 24-25. As previously noted, the board had a historical reversion of at least $450,000 based on the previous 4 fiscal years. However, the board did not have prior year savings for 2021. The board's costs are projected to continue increasing from costs associated with business modernization. Because current law requires the fund to remain viable and solvent, the board is required to rectify these fundamental structural issues. What does this mean? It means that future action is required. The board will need to take action to reduce or eliminate the structural imbalance to remain solvent. The board has 3 options to reduce the structural imbalance. 1, reduce spending. 2, increase revenues. Or 3, a combination of both 1 and 2. The board has already begun taking action by voting to approve increasing the initial and renewal license fees from $300 to $400 through the regulatory process. This action is projected to increase revenues by approximately $1.1 million per year. However, we've noted revenues are slightly higher in odd number fiscal years 2020-21, total revenues of approximate 3 million versus the 4.36 million in 21-22. While we have been aware of the historical high-low variance, the 21-22 delta grew over previous trends. We are currently working with the board staff to complete the workload revenue projections for the 23-24 governor's budget, and we'll be looking into this in more detail and how the regulatory fee increase impacts future revenues. Board staff will also be working with the DCA Budget Office to conduct a fee study, which my colleague Matt Nishimini will discuss further, as well as touch on the last attachment on page 45, a memo regarding the fiduciary responsibilities of the board's fund. So before I open up for questions, I would like to introduce Matt Nishimini. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Harmony. My name is Matt Nishimini, and I'm with the DCA Regulations Unit and also the Budget Office. It's nice to be here. I'll let you, if you guys have any questions specifically for Harmony, I'll let you guys address those, and then I'll jump into my presentation.
Thank you, boss. Harmony, I do have a question. Is this trajectory for our boards in line with similar training to many other boards that you have knowledge of?
In reference to the structural imbalance, or in reference to the revenue?
Structure imbalance.
So maybe I'll jump in. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Harmony.
So we monitor all of the boards and bureaus funds closely and watch for structural imbalance to work with the boards when those occur to find solutions. Every board and bureau is different, and their structure and licensee population is different as well. However, there are other boards and bureaus that do face similar situations where the expenditures are outweighing the revenue, and closer monitoring of the fund then occurs, and working with the budget office to find ways to rectify and ensure that moving forward, the board or bureau's fund remains solvent.
Matt, you have anything added to help us?
Yes, Mr. President, so thank you. So as Harmony noted earlier, structural imbalances will accelerate over time unless the board takes action. Assuming revenues stay flat, your expenditures will increase year over year outgoing. And those are related to employee compensation, retirement benefits, things like that. So we want to address structural imbalances, and I'm going to go more into that into my presentation. If there's any further questions, I can more fully address your comments in a few minutes.
I think you should go ahead. Unless other members, I don't see a hand yet, do your part, and then perhaps we can have another discussion.
Okay, very good. So if we could just go to the next slide then, page 45. So again, my name is Matt Nishimini. While we're waiting for this to come up, I'm with the DCA Reg Office and the Budget Office. Some of you may remember me. I was last at this board meeting in February, and I was there to assist with moving the regulatory fee proposal forward. I'm here to talk about this memo here that's up on the screen. It's a bit dated, and it has the name of a different board, the Board of Vocational Nursing and Psych Techs, and it's from last year. However, the contents remain the same.
This is the moderator. I'm just going to jump in real quick. Because this is a PDF, board members are going to have to scroll themselves to see the rest of the document, just because it's not, unfortunately, it's only showing the top part. You'll just need to scroll down to look at it.
Thank you, moderator. So I'm going to talk about this memo in a minute, but I want to just preface my comments before we jump into the memo by saying that we're going to be talking about the fiduciary responsibility of you board members, of board management, and not only for the board, this board, but also for the Landscape Architects Technical Committee, which this board has jurisdiction. And while I'm aware that this board is comprised of seasoned board members who already understand your fiduciary responsibilities and roles, my presentation is intended merely as a reminder to those folks and to also more broadly enlighten anyone attending today's meeting that may be less familiar with these requirements. I mentioned the LATC earlier because this board's purview and because the LATC is also structurally imbalanced. However, the LATC is already at its statutory caps and cannot increase fees further without a legislative change. Also, so you are aware, we did a similar presentation at last month's LATC meeting. So we're going to talk about the roles of you board members, board management, staff, the DCA regulations unit, and the budget office. And I'm here. My role is to help assist the board and LATC to navigate these financial matters and priorities. So let's jump into this memo. So again, first let's note that this is a dated memo from nearly a year ago, and it was provided to the Board of Vocational Nursing and Psychiatric Technicians and was written by one of our senior attorneys in the DCA. And if we just look at the introduction, we'll begin with that. The purpose of this agenda item is to inform the board members about their fiduciary duties and responsibilities under California law for the fiscal management and administration of the board's fund. And then moving into the governing laws, the Budget Act specifically says that you may not incur obligations beyond the specific purposes for which the Budget Act appropriates those funds. And then moving to page 2 of this memo, there's actually government code that says, specifically government code 13324, says that every person who incurs any expenditure in excess of the allotments or other provisions of the fiscal year budget as approved by the department is liable both personally and on his official bond for the amount of the excess expenditures. And then Control Section 32 of the Budget Act says a similar thing. So that's, that's very serious responsibility that you board members have. If you fill out a Form 700, that makes you technically liable for these over expenditures. And so some of you may be asking, why am I going over this? Aren't the regulatory fee increases sufficient? So we started those last spring, and those are moving through the pipe nicely. And as Harmony mentioned, it's going to increase initial and renewal license fees from $300 to $400, which is the statutory maximum, and will bring in roughly a little over $1 million per year. So yes, the regulatory increase, which is currently underway, will stabilize the board's funding in the near future. And at least in the odd number years, as she pointed out, we have this high-low phenomenon. But the board will continue to be structurally imbalanced in the even number of fiscal years and structurally imbalanced over any 2-year period. And without action, this board could become insolvent as early as the 25-26 fiscal year, which is really only 3 years away. And then we'd further note the regulatory proposal will increase the board's fees to their statutory maximum, the cap. So the board cannot further increase revenues without a legislative change. So in that sense, essentially the board and the LATC are in very similar situations, with both needing statutory changes to increase fees in the future. Albeit the LATC is farther along and currently is scheduled to become insolvent as early as 23-24. So knowing all of this, then it's important to understand the legislative cycle and how a board or committee goes about making a legislative fee change. Because these things take time and thought and effort. The legislature typically requires a fee study analysis to be completed to support any proposed fee levels. Adding to all these factors, as Harmony mentioned, the board and LATC are undergoing business modernization projects to update their IT legacy systems to modern platforms, which began with resources and funding being approved in the 21-22 fiscal year and again in the 22-23 current year. And those costs will continue. Assuming the project can stay on track without delays, costs should plateau next year in the 23-24 fiscal year and then decrease annually thereafter as the project goes into maintenance phases. So as a result, the board's executive officer, Ms. Zuniga, and LATC management began coordinating with my office to begin fee study analyses. These studies analyze and determine the direct workload input costs required to process each license type, each application type, exams, initial license, renewals, etc. And this analysis is based on interviews with staff, as well as process mapping, which were previously completed by the department and the programs. And then after the direct costs are determined, all other indirect costs, such as any other program operating expenses, enforcement-related costs, Attorney General, Office of Administrative Hearings, and any other overhead costs are distributed fairly and equitably to each application type. Now, the LATC fee study was started several weeks ago and should be completed in the coming weeks to be presented at the November 4th committee meeting, at which time the committee members will consider new fee level amounts to eliminate any structural imbalance and to sustain the LATC in the future. We've also begun working with Ms. Zuniga and board staff to assess the board's fees. And we are currently scheduled to complete the board's fee study in time for the December 9th board meeting. At that time, we'll present both the LATC fee study and the board's fee study for your board member consideration. Now, the timing of both studies is important because board action will be required to initiate any legislative proposals in the 22-23 legislative session. We are currently coordinating with the DCA Office of Legislative Affairs to include the board and LATC in next year's legislative session, which would make any statutory fee changes effective January 1, 2024. Now, these changes for the board, I want to make clear that the $400 initial and renewal license fee levels would remain as the baseline. So the board licensees would likely not see any increases effective 1/1/24 because we already know that the $400 fee levels are sufficient to sustain the board in the near future. But the studies will provide for a range above that minimum $400 level. And this is intended to provide the board flexibility to increase revenues through the regulatory process, either in response to programmatic or policy initiatives, or in the event of unanticipated costs, such as future legislation, and to plan for 25-26 and beyond. Now, for LATC, we would want those fees to become effective January 1, 2024, so that they can remain solvent. And with that, I can answer any questions that you board members may have.
I have a question for mostly Harmony, maybe you both and Laura. So I understand we have been paying for the expense of business modernization, and when we will be stop paying that? Which year?
This is Laura. Harmony might have a more precise answer than I do, but the project started in the spring, although cost started before that. The closeout is scheduled for November 2023, so that's when the bulk of the costs are. There is maintenance and operation that's ongoing, so I don't know that we have an exact time when it'll end, but this is, right now we're in the time where we're spending the most amount of money.
Well, for both you and Harmony, after we stop paying the business modernization, is that consideration already built in your projection? Harmony, this is consider we stop paying business modernization cost, that our structure imbalance still as you illustrate.
So once the business modernization project kind of wraps up and is in place, there will continue to be a maintenance that will be ongoing, but those costs will not be as high as the initial portion of the project. But they will be included in those projections ongoing. And as on the fund condition, it does include that estimate for those costs in budget year +1 and budget year +2 for now. But with Matt's process as well, that is taken into consideration, and that maintenance phase will be included in those projections ongoing as well.
How many follow up on it? Is every board is paying their own, paying the business modernization as we paid, or DCA could afford some part of it?
So each board and bureau that participated in the business modernization had the costs associated with that upgrade. So each program, board or bureau that participated in business modernization paid has a portion as well. So it's on each board and bureau within their budget to fund the business modernization efforts for their board or bureau.
This is all for three of you, particularly for Matt. Is it possible if let's say we have several boards or all the boards ask for DCA take on a maintenance part of the business operation for the boards? Is that something that the state could consider? In other words, maybe change my question. Did the DCA ever pays for a general type of investment operation cost for all boards? The DCA has that line of budget?
So not specifically in the way that you're thinking. However, the Office of Information Systems, our DCA IT shop or unit, there are efficiencies gained by having that unit together. Rather than housing your own IT people out at your board, it would be much more expensive and costly for you to maintain your systems. So in that sense, that there are economies of scale and efficiencies that are gained by having the centralized services of the Office of Information Services.
Tian, this is Laura. If I can just add to what Matt is saying, I think with the question you're asking, if DCA would take on the cost, DCA doesn't receive any general fund money. It's funded through pro rata, so all the boards and bureaus are using a portion of their licensing fees to fund DCA's operations. So it would still really just be passing those costs on to the programs.
Oh.
Yeah, it flows up and they get a percentage, so yeah.
Okay.
Okay, can I ask a question now,
Yes.
Tian?
Yeah, I see. Oh,
yeah.
Sorry. You go ahead, and then Robert Pierman afterwards.
Okay, so first question is not really about increasing revenue, but more of a stabilizing. would it be possible instead of doing every other year just to have half and half so that there's a consistent amount of income every year? You know, we're renewing what, every odd year or whatever. Why can't you just do half odd and half even? That's one question.
So it's based upon the biennial renewal cycle. Most of your revenues are gained from renewals. And so we would have to realign your licensees to that schedule.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's sort of that solves one problem. It doesn't solve the overall problem, you know, of revenue increase, but maybe all the, you know, A through L or whatever, you know, just something relatively simple so that your revenue is consistent year after year. Okay.
I don't know if it sounds simple on paper, but to configure your licensee's license schedule, renewal schedule is a huge undertaking for the board. That would be something that is atypical for a board to do. You would have to get buy-in from your licensees. So that would be a very large, atypical project. But you know, it's the purview of this board to make those type of decisions. At the end of the day, so long as you understand and you can manage around the high-low, we don't see a problem with that from a fiscal perspective. So long as at the end of the day, you're able to fund your program and your policy initiatives.
Okay.
Sylvia, this is Laura, just to add on to that. I would say our board has what I don't consider to be a typical renewal structure in that it's not a 2-year renewal. It ties to the birth month. So your first license, right, is prorated. So, I mean, we could look at whether if we make a change to that. As Matt said, it is a big change, but you know, whether that would have any benefits. So something we can look at.
It does not increase the actual money. Robert.
Wait. I have a second question.
Oh, second question. Go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, not quite done. So, Matt, you had mentioned something about obviously the legislative action is required, and then the study that precedes it. So, let's just say that you know currently it's 300 or what is it, 400, 300 or 400 to renew? 4. So I'm just using a hypothetical. So let's say that let me ask: is the study done to ascertain whether a number could be achieved, or do we say, hey, you know, we really need the revenue of each renewal to be $500, and then you sort of work your way into that logic? So I'm just curious because we know we're on our way out of commission here, you know, if we don't do something, and we know there's got to be an increase. So do we try to set a goal of a number that works for us to, you know, keep going as an institution, or do we have to wait for the study to tell us what can people afford or what are we worth? So that's kind of a big question, but
very good question. So as Harmony's noted, the board is structurally imbalanced. So on a high level, the board should be bringing in at least the same amount of outgoing expenditures plus direct draws at a minimum. And that would just keep you flat. Some programs want to have a higher fund reserve balance. They don't want a 1 month or a 2 month fund reserve balance. Maybe they want a 6 to 10 month reserve balance. That is a policy decision that you board members can make. And then also the analysis will identify and determine the cost related to each fee that you have. Now, you don't have very many fees. You've got a few exam fees, and you've got your initial and renewal fees, and then maybe a duplicate fee. You only have a half dozen or so fees. But to the extent you don't want to charge the full cost amount for a specified application type, you would have to offset that. Or you could, one of your options would be to offset that difference with another fee, right? Have a fee be higher, so another fee could be lower. Now that is the purview of the board. Again, it's your option to make that policy decision. The analysis is going to identify what the true cost of each one of those application types is.
See.
And what we can do is we're going to use a baseline. So we know what your budget is today, and we can forecast what your budget is going to be in out years, 27, 28, 29. And then you, as policy decision makers, can opt for what fee levels you think are appropriate that can fund your priorities and your policy initiatives moving forward. Does that help?
Yeah, it helps. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Robert, you're patiently waiting.
Sure. So I am looking at, for example, some of the expenditures listed that have created this imbalance thing, or that come to part of it. They include the BizMod, which I think I've been board 6 years, and that's been kind of an ongoing snafu, really, by 2 administrations to this point. It includes the pension payments, and then we have to pay a share of DCA's operations. All those things are really kind of out of our control. And we already have presented to licensees, they have to have a fee increase coming up. And now we're talking about potentially another one. We also know that the state has multi-billion dollar surplus. And so I'd like you to address to licensees who be listening, why is the only recourse DCA is given that we put on the backs of them to raise their fees, as opposed to some direct appropriation by the legislature or the department to cover these expenses, which from the licensee's perspective, some of them are not within their board's control?
No, that's a very good question. So let me address your concerns about the BizMod project. So the BizMod project is a relatively recent undertaking of this program, and this board went into the project with several other programs to reduce the overall costs of the project. And the project budget that you currently have is much more efficient and reasonable than prior IT projects in the past. To address your other questions about general fund dollars or other appropriations. So it is certainly the purview of this board to seek general fund dollars, right? Currently, all of the DCA programs are funded through license fees, just like you. So everyone is basically the same. But recently, there have been some programs that have received general fund augmentations. During the pandemic, there was a program that received general fund dollars, and this current year budget does have general fund dollars. So it is it certainly is the right for you board members to go. I mean, you would have to basically seek that appropriation from the governor and go out and do that. DCA does not go out and solicit general fund dollars for programs. But you as board members could work through the legislature or work through your contacts with the governor's office to make a case that you need general fund dollars. You're certainly open to do that. However, let me just caution you that when you do receive general fund dollars, it's not a blank check. So right now, you guys are a semi-autonomous program. You are the board. You board members run the board. The executive officer works for you board members. But once you start receiving general fund dollars, then you are more part of the administration, right? Because the administration now is controlling your dollars. And so you're much more like a Department of Corrections or a Department of Justice. And you're less, you could be subject to less autonomy is the way I would put it, right? Because those purse strings are now attached to you, attached to general fund dollars. So that, I would just make that statement.
This is Laura. If I could just add on to what Matt was saying. Robert, Matt's right in that we're relatively early on in this business modernization process, but we were in, the whole department was on kind of a longer term schedule with the Breeze program. And so we've been talking about it for quite some time. So I think it's definitely been a long time coming. And we put money into Breeze that for a system, that we're not using. So I understand that frustration. And Matt's correct in that the board could go and ask for money. I would just say the likelihood of getting it is not great, and that the department has approximately 40 licensing boards and bureaus, and we would have to explain why we deserve it when other programs don't get it. And I think that the reason, part of the reason the boards are funded through license fees is that's sort of the cost the profession pays for having the board structure that is semi-autonomous, that regulates the profession, rather than just, having all of it regulated by one department or one board. It's sort of the cost of doing business the way we do.
Well, certainly if our licensees want to protest, some of us might think we've got an obligation to then make that request upstream. My recollection is that at times when the government was in deficit, they essentially took money or borrowed money from organizations like us who had a surplus. So what's good for the goose might be good for the gander. And the notion that somehow we would relinquish our independence is just a noble thought, but clearly makes no sense given that we're in this position in part, as I point out, by imposed expenditures from above anyway. So let's not be under this theory that somehow we're totally independent and aren't under DCA control. Your whole presentation just proves that.
And the state has borrowed money in the past. They do repay it with interest. So we don't currently have any outstanding loans.
Tien, if I could, this is Ron. Can I ask a few questions?
Sunny also has his hand up too, Tian, if you would like to go to him after.
I guess I have a few observations and a few questions. It appears as though, this is both to Laura, Matt, and Harmony, is the intent here to basically bring to our attention both the fiduciary responsibility of the board and sort of the acknowledgement of where we sit financially. And then the third piece of the observation or the question would basically be the board's level of engagement in solving the problem or addressing the problem. It sounded as if Matt suggested that both staff and his office are currently looking at strategies and analysis of where we are. But the board has not, at least not to my knowledge, been in part of that engagement. Are we actually, in this particular case, looking for staff in your office, Matt, to come back with possible solutions? Because it appears as though we're talking about revenue streams, you're talking about cash flow, but we haven't necessarily talked about lifestyle changes. And so I'm trying to figure out who develops the strategy for responding to this, both in the short term and in the long term.
Thank you for that.
Laura. I'll jump in for Matt. So I think, Matt, we just met with the budget office to talk about doing the fee study to kind of identify what it costs us, had to perform our operations. So I think when that comes to the board in December, I think that'll be a time to give the board more information as to, what our costs are and what potential options we have to change operations, try to reduce costs. So that's something that staff always looks at, but, the board can have that discussion and look at what our options are. And I think today it's really just to bring it to your attention. I think it's important for board members to understand the fiduciary responsibility they have and that I myself as the executive officer have, and just sort of prepare us that this is coming and we'll, need to discuss it further once we have the fee study results.
And I think it's important to note that, and Matt mentioned this, is that this was presented, the same issue came up at the LATC meeting, and there was very similar conversations from the board committee there, or the committee board there. And so I think that we're having parallel conversations. But Matt, just as a point of clarification, and this is to you and Laura, it is the board, CAB's responsibility to provide direction to LATC, because LATC serves as a committee under the CAB, but I would be curious to see what Mike's response is to how he sees the LATC responding to this as well, if that's appropriate.
You mean from our legal counsel? Is that what you're asking for?
From Mike Wazinski from LATC.
Oh, John Roshinsky. Yeah.
I mean, John, I'm sorry.
So to answer the first part of your question, yes. So it's, since LATC is advisory under the board, LATC members will discuss this, but the board is also going to have to vote to take any action on their fees. John should be here and can chime in.
Okay.
Yeah, this is John. If I could just add my comments really quickly. I can tell you that the LATC committee is extremely concerned about this issue, primarily because of the anticipation that we're going to have to raise our fees to the point that they may become prohibitive in order to cover these expenses. And so we are anxiously awaiting the presentation that will happen in November. So just to let everybody know, this is not going to be an easy issue to deal with.
I like move forward to Sunny because quite a few hands, and we'll come back another round of discussion. Sunny, go ahead.
Thanks. I have a couple of comments, so I hope I can get through them all quickly. First of all, I'm just a little bit surprised at this presentation. I had sort of read through it and have remembered the presentations before and remembered that we just sort of went through a fee increase and listened to the sort of pain that that the architects that were licensees in our state comparing our fees to other states have. So I guess my first question is just the tone of this presentation. This PDF that's on the screen, that's the Board of Vocational Nursing and Psychiatric Technicians. Is this an example of what we will get if we don't figure this out? Or are we supposed to just put California Architects Board in here and suggest that we already have received this? It feels a little bit threat-based, I guess, is my point. And that was a question, but I'm just going to go on with some comments and then maybe I can get some responses. And then separately, you know, while I know most of the driving laws because I drive a car, and I know most of the architecture laws because I'm an architect, and I know, you know, that I have to pay my taxes and that sort of thing. And maybe you guys could correct me if I'm wrong, but when I was appointed by the governor's office to this position, this particular law of the budget responsibility of the officers of officers of the California Architects Board and other officers, this certainly wasn't sort of put in front of my face as a priority, and it certainly wasn't under my oath when I received my cute little pen. So to be getting this at this point, 2 or 3 years into my sort of service to the state of California, feels very threatening and not necessarily like helpful.
Funny, if I can.
And as a result, you know, like this is clearly like the result of many years of the organization before I got involved. So I just wanted to point that out. So I understand it's important, but it feels a little raw.
I didn't mean it to be threatening, and I will take the blame for having it included because I think it's important for the board members to understand this. I know we had the presentation in December. I don't think we included this. And I know even at the staff level and talking to like legal and budget, not everyone, even at the staff level, understands this responsibility. And you're right, it's not highlighted anywhere. It's not, I don't think, in board member orientation training. You're not aware when you're appointed this position. And it's important for you to realize that it is a worst case scenario, and I don't think it's ever happened at a DCA board, but it's just sort of background information for you to know. Staff's going to do everything we can to reduce our costs before we're going to increase fees, because I have the same sympathy with the profession we regulate.
Totally. And I just pointed out to the other board members, you know, I mean, look, when you think about doing government service, I mean, I don't think a poll worker is liable for, you know, something going down at the polls, but it sounds like we are, and we've been put in a tough spot, and it's a bummer. And so I get it. It's also not completely crystal clear like what our options are, but based on the conversation before and some of the questions that people have asked, maybe we're going to get that in December. The scary part about getting that in December to me is looking at these projections is that, oh my God, it's 2023 at the end of December, you know? So, and it looks like we're having problems in 18 months after that, you know? So given the legislative needs and the time, I mean, I don't know how to escalate this, but it certainly sort of seems that way. lastly, it would be nice to sort of know if there was a way to sort of clean house, so to speak. But based on my relationship so far, I haven't seen anything that felt frivolous about this department. So that I'm skeptical that we could cut costs. And it seems like we need to deal with this quickly. But I also just want to put one other thing out there that really bugs me is that the idea that the fee increase is the only way, like there needs to be, in my opinion, a much more creative solution. The idea that the sort of protection of consumers is on the back of the very people that are providing the service seems crazy. When you drive a car, you pay taxes, and those taxes pay for the road and for the protection and for consumer affairs, for rules and regulations. The car manufacturers, they're also being taxed. But anyway, the idea that people use architects and architecture and require their services and then pull permits, but don't pay a fee that would protect, consumers in general and protect this office and board is kind of ironic and a little bit backwards and crazy to me. So I thought I had questions, but I really just wanted to rant. So there you go.
Okay. Brett, you have been so patient. Go ahead, Brett Blackstone.
Robert Ehrman actually stole my thunder and asked many of the questions I wanted to ask. The only one that I still had left to ask is of staff, which is, we're talking about these dire circumstances, and yet we have the state general fund, which has borrowed money from us. And why is it, how long from now can we expect a repayment? And can we accelerate that? And because it seems to me somewhat hypocritical for, the state to have these, to potentially make us personally liable at the same time that the same state has helped destabilize our situation by borrowing money from us that it hasn't paid back.
This is Laura. We actually don't have an outstanding general fund loan right now. So if we did, the state would return it before we would increase fees.
Okay, I didn't know that. I guess I heard you talk about the general fund, but my audio isn't clear, so I guess I didn't hear you say that it was paid back in full already.
Yeah. So nothing outstanding.
Right. So by law, all general fund loans need to be repaid back before any statutory increases are implemented.
That's what I thought. So that's why it kind of bothered me, but I didn't know it was repaid.
Yes.
Okay. Sylvia, this is a new hand.
Yes, thank you. So we've had this discussion that I'm going to bring up very tentatively in the past, and this is the issue of checking. And now it's a different reason, and that is the idea of further combining LATC and us. I'm wondering, Laura, maybe you would know this just as a really big picture question, whether if we further consolidate LATC and the board, architects board, under one board, which is sort of kind of is, but we have different meetings and, it takes time for the staff to manage both. And I know this is a legislative kind of change, but what if we combine landscape architects and architects into one single board? Would that help financially?
Sylvia, so that's an interesting question. I think where you would see savings if you combine the structures, because there definitely is duplication in terms of like the public meetings. So you have costs there and the members, but really the way to achieve savings from that is if you did fully combine the programs, it would probably result in some staff reduction if you combine the functions, and that's really the only way you would get significant savings. But that is certainly something we can study.
Yeah, it's a big move, but we had already touched it, on various edges, touched around it, and as we all know, other states do have multidisciplinary boards.
Right.
Some of them have like piles of people in one board. This would only be the two related professions, which I personally think makes a lot of sense. It makes the outlier of LATC currently on our board less outlying and more combined. I don't know how John Rosinski feels about it, but it's just a
It is an issue that'll come up later on the agenda under the LATC strategic plan. They proposed looking at their structure and, you know, whether it's still appropriate. And so it wasn't for budget reasons, but certainly as part of this budget discussion, you know, it'll get wrapped into that.
I like to wrap up this discussion very quickly, move on to next one. But Brett, are you still, this is new hand, you need more questions? You have more questions?
No, old hand.
Okay, so first of all, this I actually support the idea of bringing this subject to this meeting and give us a warning, and we know we can afford to make this our priority for next few meetings. That's will be my recommendation. Since I'm still running the December meeting, you can prepare this will be one of the main subjects, where I will launch a blue sky thinking type of approach. And also, I think the board need more information from DCA, from experts like Matt and Harmony, and to know broader what is the network, this spider web system of how the money is coming and used. For example, I don't even know for the fees that we collect from the licensees, how much is used for this on board and how much maybe a percentage used for beyond this board. All these things I think is important for the board and full board to know before we start looking for solutions. So, but I hope I have support of a member, and we now have other priorities settled almost. And we can now really focus on this for next few meetings or even longer, make it structurally work for a longer term. So anyway, with that said, if everyone's okay, I like to move on to the next agenda. But I wanted the staff from both board and also DCA maybe join us for next meeting where we have some more technical questions on all these details of the budget and related concerns. Okay.
I think we'll have to open for public comment. Right?
Yeah, we're opening for public comment, and then we will move to the next agenda. So go ahead.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on agenda item G, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, this is the moderator. Seeing no requests for comment, would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you. And we now move to agenda H. We will have Laura Zuniga to give update on maybe a possible action as well on legislations and the materials on page 48. Laura.
Thank you. And this will be pretty quick. It's just an update. So the first item is SB 1214. This bill had a provision that was sponsored by AIA California, and it provided, it requires a local planning agency to ensure that architectural drawings that contain protected information are made available online to the public in a manner that doesn't facilitate their copying to protect that protected information. The governor did sign this bill, so this provision will take effect next year, and we'll do some outreach to licensees to help educate. There aren't any questions on that one. The next one is...
I have a question on that one.
Yeah.
This is Rick Gladstone. So, you know, I have represented many property owners who want to get copies of plans for their own homes or commercial owners for their own buildings, and they can't get them, to figure out how their buildings were put together and how renovations can next be done without getting the permission of the architects who prepared the plans. And I noticed the law seems to kind of address the frustration many people I know have in getting plans for their own property, particularly when a previous owner commissioned those plans and before they took title. And I noticed that the law signed by the governor says in it that architects are allowed to prepare some kind of schematic or shorter condensed version of those plans and provide it to members of the public. First of all, I want to know if my reading of that is correct, and two, what was the reason for that? Because it seems to me that if that's supposed to help the consumer, it really doesn't do that unless an architect is required to provide abbreviated plans or some schematic plans or something less than the full detailed plans. So could someone address those questions?
Brett, let me make sure I understand what you're asking. So I think the issue you're talking about is a little bit separate from what's covered by this legislation in terms of the problem that exists for consumers to get a copy of their own plans. The house was probably built before they bought it, so they're trying to go and get a copy of those plans, and then the planning department or the building department needs permission from the architect to release them. I think is what you're asking about. Yeah. I'm not sure, to be honest, what we can do in that area. I'm aware that it is an issue. I probably would have to look at it a little bit more and report back, but I don't know if any of our architect members could provide any additional information.
Well, it would be great if you could report back on that, and particularly, what was the origin of the
you could
in the law?
I could try Mark Christian and also John Ron Jones, and let's hear from Mark Christian, and he's probably familiar with the bill. Moderator, could you promote Mark Christian?
This is the moderator. He should be able to unmute his microphone now.
Thank you, President Fang, members of the board. Mark Christian with the American Institute of Architects, California. We were the sponsors of this bill. Board member Gladstone, there are two different things here. One is seeking entitlements by through the planning departments, and then seeking a building permit through the building department. And the building department, of course, has the construction documents where an owner would want to get a copy of them for modifications, remodeling, additions to a building. That is what you're talking about. This bill does not address the documents that are housed at building departments, the construction documents. This is dealing with the architectural drawings to planning departments, which precedes the building department portion of part of the process. So when your clients are seeking the documents from a building department, that is a completely different body of law than what SB 1214 deals with. This deals only with the planning departments. These are not construction documents. These are drawings to get the entitlement to proceed to the building department. Does that help? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that helps, but that just raises the next question to you is, so what was the intent of the law vis-a-vis the plans that go to the planning department? Was it that the proprietary interests of the architect get protected, or did it also involve consumer protection?
Two things, very related. local planning departments it's now a common practice for local planning departments to post the architectural drawings submitted to them online.
Sure.
Certainly this allows their constituencies, the public, to understand the project and to make informed comments to participate in the process, the entitlement process.
Sure.
That act of them doing that is a violation of federal law. What they are posting itself is a violation of the Federal Copyright Act, and therefore it's a violation of the architect's intellectual property rights. If it's just the act of posting it online is a copyright violation. And it also can facilitate someone to download those because it's a downloadable platform. It can be downloaded from that platform. That would be another violation. So with this bill, we're trying to do two things. Help local planning departments do their job, do what they're supposed to do, which is allow their constituencies to participate in the process and to do it in a way that does not violate federal law and therefore protects the intellectual property rights of architects. So it says you cannot post this online in a copyable format. You can't post online. You cannot make it available to the public in person in a copyable way. The public can view these documents, but they can't copy it. But it does create other documents. It recognizes other documents such as site plans, such as massing diagrams that can be posted onto the internet in a copyable format that would allow the public to get an idea of what the project is. And if they want to, they can go to the planning department in person and take a look at the full set of architectural drawings that have been submitted to the planning department to help them make informed comments to the planning department to participate in the public process. But we're trying to help local governments not violate copyright law, and we're trying to protect the intellectual property rights of architects. Those are the two objectives of the bill.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate the explanation. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you, Mark. Any other comments before we move to the next bill?
Okay, so the next one is SB 1237. This bill is still before the governor. This just makes a clarification of the definition of active duty to clarify when members of the military are eligible for a waiver of renewal fees. So they're already eligible, it's just clarifying when they're eligible. Are there any questions? And so the last one is SB 1443. This bill is by Senator Roth. It contains a lot of provisions, but as it relates to our board and LATC, it gives us an extension on our sunset date of 1 year. So I think we sunset now January 1, 2025, which means that we will need to prepare a report and submit it, I think January 2024, and then we'd have hearings before the legislature in the spring of 2024. Are there any questions?
This is Ron. I do have a question. And would it be appropriate in this, I'll say, reapplication to address the relationship between LATC and NCARB, or is it practical for it to happen as part of this reapplication process, or does it matter?
You mean in the sunset report to talk
Yes,
about the structure? You mean the relationship between the board and LATC?
Right, the structural relationship, exactly.
Yeah, that would definitely be a good opportunity to explain, if the board and LATC spend time looking at it, if they want to suggest any changes or even just mention the work they've done and they don't want any changes, that would definitely be the opportunity to do it.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see other hands. We will open for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests.
I'd like to take this opportunity to ask my members. I intend to have 2 more items complete after item J, which is, I hope, is quick. Then we'll take a quick break then we move to the rest of it. Is that okay? We estimate maybe at the 12:15, we take 15 minutes break. Everyone okay with this?
Yes.
Is that intended to be kind of a lunch break or just a quick break?
No, 15 minutes, no lunch. So yeah, drink, break.
Look what my husband just brought me.
Oh, Dennis know how my behave in the meeting.
BLT.
Then we don't have to break at all now. We can just keep going.
No, that I get into this potential quality of life law and regulation problems.
That's funny. Okay.
This is the moderator. Appears there's no request for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Okay. So we are proceeding to item I, and Laura also, Laura will present the update and discussions of anything happening, and Cobb will be real quick.
Okay, thank you. This one's actually really brief. We always have it on the agenda, but we don't have an NCARB meeting coming up, so there's no materials to review. I will just mention that I just want to thank NCARB because I received information from them today, and they're committed to providing the boards information about upcoming meetings 6 months in advance so that we can plan travel better, and that they also asked us to commit to letting them know in advance which members are going to be attending. So I'll work with the board president on that. So I think that would be really helpful. The regional meeting is in Hawaii. The annual meeting is in Florida. As a reminder to members, there's lots of states that we're not able to travel to. NCARB does keep virtual options open, which is really helpful to facilitate participation. So looks like Sylvia might want to add something.
Yes, I do. I do want to let everybody know that the Honolulu meeting has been finalized. We're staying at the Prince Hotel, which is off Waikiki, because NCARB did not want any further comments, about being on vacation. But obviously, we're at the Prince Hotel, and there'll be lots of work. They're working on various tours. Right now, they're thinking that the icebreaker might be on the USS Missouri, which would be interesting for all of us to see. But, obviously they're going to make sure we work really hard to compensate for the fact that we're in Honolulu. But as soon as we, Laura, you might need to confirm how many board members are being sponsored by NCARB and so forth, so that we can take full advantage of this opportunity, and have everybody sign up ASAP. I believe that, I will not be counted, obviously. And I know you're always a member that's invited. And so the rest is usually what? Can you remind the board?
Yeah, I do have, just as a reminder, we'll have to get the trip approved because we don't have it approved yet, but it's not one of the banned states, so that's good news. But so NCARB funds 4 members. So you're right, Sylvia, you would be counted as part of the NCARB board of directors, so you're not out of California's allocation. They fund the executive officer, they fund a public member of the board, and then 2 other board members, whoever the board chooses. They also just announced funding for, if there's a newly appointed board member, that member could be added as an additional
awesome
funded person.
Sure, I believe, Tian, that you can go under WestCarb's dime. Okay.
Okay. Tell other member may not be familiar with. This is a regional summit we're talking about.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
June of next year, and all these details will be March of next year will be discussed in early next year. Ron, I just want to give you a quick overview about overall, but thank you for the information.
Sure.
Any comments before I open to public comment? If I see no, let's open for public comment. And Trish, I hope you're prepared. We will quickly move to your item before break.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Please. We're moving to item J, updates on committees. We will do the LATC report first by Trish, and then Mitra will give a brief report on the communications committee that they just met 2 weeks ago. Trish.
Thank you. I have, there are 2 action items to present today. The first will be approval of our draft strategic plan and then approval of modified text for the national layer. I'll, however, first start with the update from our August 2nd LATC meeting. You were updated earlier. DCA Budget Office presented to the LATC that our budgets are reflecting a structural imbalance. So they are conducting a fee study at this time. We will present their findings to the LATC at their meeting on November 4th, and then subsequently at the next board meeting. So we look forward to working with the budget staff and working through this topic. The next agenda item I wanted to update the board on is the UCLA Extension Certificate Program. As you know, LATC approves that program. They updated the LATC that they are adapting to provide a distance-based remote education where students would participate in person during designated weekends during the enrollment period and participate remotely the rest of the time. LATC supports the UCLA-TC extension and plans to review the pilot low study residency program at its next site visit in 2025. We also discussed the upcoming CLARB annual meeting, which will be held next week, September 21st through the 23rd in Omaha, Nebraska. LATC voted on CLARB leadership and designated LATC Chair John Rosinski and myself as representatives in attendance during the annual meeting. Laurel will also be attending. And then at the end, John announced his reappointment to the LATC through June of 2026. So I'll move on to the first action item to be presented to the board is the attached 2022-2024 LATC strategic plan for board approval. The LATC developed the 3-year plan in April and approved the draft at its meeting in August. The plan includes implementation of a new automated licensing and enforcement system, conducting a linkage study between the LAIR and the California supplemental exam, continued discussion regarding the need for continuing education, and preparation for the sunset review. I wanted to actually also point out the specific objective that was raised earlier during the meeting. There is under organizational effectiveness for LATC to research the economic and consumer protection impact of reestablishing the Landscape Architects Board for establishing a merged board for the California Architects Board to provide better representation, strengthen the distinction between the two entities, and increase efficiency. So that will come back later for discussion. So those are just to name a few. Board liaison Ron Jones participated in the strategic plan development session. On August 26th, Chair Roshinsky and Board President Tian Feng discussed the new objectives to ensure its success. At today's meeting, the board is asked to approve the attached 2022-2024 LATC strategic plan. At this time, I'll pause for board discussion and possible action before moving to the next action item.
Any comment, questions? Okay. Do we do two separate motions? Trish, could you facilitate me?
Mr. President, yeah, I'd recommend that you do the motion separately so there can be discussion on each item in a decision.
Okay.
Chairman Tien, this is Ron Jones. I move that we accept the report or approve the report of the strategic plan. Of the strategic plan for 22-24.
I second, Robert.
Okay, good. Okay, Mr. Secretary, can we call the roll? Okay.
Yes, on that motion, pardon?
We will need public comment on the motion.
Public comment, yes. What happened to me? I seems have a behavior problem here. Okay, open for public comment before we vote.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Okay, so who was second?
I was about to call the roll.
Oh, you call roll. Okay.
May I go forward?
Ron moved the motion, and Robert second.
Robert.
Okay, great. Yes, we call the roll for voting.
Okay, Tian Feng.
Yes.
Sunny Ward.
Yes.
Rick Gladstone, yes. Ronald Jones.
Yes.
Mitra Kanani.
Yes.
Sylvia Kwan.
Yes.
Robert Kerman.
Yes.
Nilza Serrano. It appears she's not here even now, so we have a majority vote.
Okay. All right. Good. I like move to approve the second action item, which is approval of a draft strategic plan for 2022 to 2024. And do I need a more specific language, or this is okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
So the second item is the proposed regulatory action. Trish can describe it.
Do you want me to?
Hold a second. I thought you presented both.
No.
Yes.
No, I only presented the strategic plan.
No, sorry. You go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. CLARB recently completed its linkage study of the layer. And as a result, they're transitioning to a new exam format in December of 2023. The formats are identified in our regulation sections 2614, examination transition plan. And this allows us to give credit to those who have taken previous sections appropriately, applying it to the new structure. So there's modified text attached in the packet. The board is asked to approve the proposed regulatory text for section 2614, direct staff to submit the text to the director of the Department of Consumer Affairs and the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency for review, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process and make any non-substantive changes to the package. If no adverse comments are received during the 45-day comment period and no hearing is requested, authorize the executive officer to adopt the proposed regulations at section 2614 as originally noticed. Thank you.
Any questions before I repeat my move the motion again? I see no questions. Okay, I like to move Someone, did someone try to speak? Okay, I'd like to move the motion to approve this rulemaking.
I'll second.
Who's Ron Jones? Oh, Robert Pearman?
Pearman.
Robert.
Pearman, okay. And we need public comment. We open up a public comment period.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests.
Very briefly before that, just confirming, Mr. President, that you're moving the language on the memo under action requested.
Yes, as
Just
read by.
clarifying that for the record.
Okay. Thank you.
And this is the moderator. Appears there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Okay, we can call the vote.
Okay, on that motion, Tian Feng,
Yes.
Sunny Ward,
Yes.
Rick Gladstone, yes. Ronald Jones,
Yes.
Mitra Kanani,
Yes.
Sylvia Kwan,
Yes.
and Robert Perrin.
Aye.
Okay. Motion approved. Next, we have Mitra Kanani to briefly report on Communications Committee meeting.
Yes, before I mention about the Communication Committee, I would like to mention that last week I attended a 2-day training session of NCARB related to alternatives to certification path. And in fact, many discussions and examples that came up was related to California and what we do in California. So California was mostly subject to discussion. I related to our communication committee meeting. We just to report that we have a new member, Doug McCauley, have joined us. He's a former executive officer of California Architect Board, and now he's the commissioner of the Department of Real Estate. So it's a great pleasure to have him amongst us. With regards to the discussions that came up, we had a good amount of discussion related to the selection of the goals, that we have various goals, and how many of them would be doable for this year, for the remaining time, considering that most of the goals are 2-year period for 2022-24. And so many of our focuses have to be directed towards how many of them are doable. We discussed about using the DSA, partnering with DSA for media, for also social media, for newsletters, and how we can achieve our goals through the usage of media. And this discussion took a good amount of time to discuss how we're going to do that. We visited each one of the goals from goal 1 all the way to goal 8, and each one of them, like for instance, the communication, regular communication with the American Institute of Architects that has been taking place with LORA's participation. And this has been an ongoing effort. The outreach plan to educate licensees and candidates, the outreach plan is in the draft phase. The development communication regarding the requirements of SB 9, this is also in the draft phase. Development on outreach plan for academic and private institutions. This is scheduled to begin towards the end of the year because practically we have been behind on this goal. We talked about also issues related to how we can provide videos to reach the academic institution. Now at this juncture, that may be access, face-to-face access to institutions are a little bit more difficult. Preparing videos might be helpful for us. Publicizing architects from diverse background to promote inclusion. And we talked about how CAP needs input on architects with diverse backgrounds and publicize some architects during Black History Month, and this is something which is ongoing. Create social media posts. Will begin near the end of the year. This is to educate licensees on violation that is taking place, and this will enlighten them about some of the do's and don'ts. Survey higher educational institutions for data on their student population. We haven't started this one, and we are going to act on that hopefully next year. The video producing videos for increased accessibility to licensees and candidates in multiple languages. These videos are produced already in English and Spanish, and we're going to focus on expanding this pool. So basically, it was a brainstorming session, but productive session with regards to laying out some of our paths to a more future outreach and basically dissemination of information, particularly with respect to the new decisions that are being made by the board. I'm open to any questions at this time. Yes, please, Sylvia.
Yes, hi. I just want to ask you, Mitra, and also Laura, about the current state of communications between this group that, frankly, I had never heard of until recently. It's called the Coalition of Community Colleges Architecture Program. It stands for, the initials are CCCAP. Has there been communication between us and them no?
It hasn't, since I have arrived on the committee, it hasn't, but that's a very good question. This coalition was very active, and in fact, I was participant in their couple of their task forces when they were starting to have this coalition. However, it has kind of subsided. Their activity is not as active and involved as it used to be. They seems like they have achieved some goals, particularly with respect to starting an action or idea, I should say, more than action, related to maybe future transformation of community colleges to four-year colleges. And this is still ongoing because it's not going to be an easy task. But as far as it's getting back to your original question, yes, it's something that should be on our agenda, and I'm glad that you brought it up.
Yeah. Laura, did you have something to add to that?
No, I was just gonna say I wasn't familiar with the group until it came up in that call earlier this week.
Right.
So I will pass it on to staff, so this is a good reminder for me,
Yeah.
and see what we can do. Thank you.
Yeah. So let me read it's just one little short sentence about what we're going to talk about with this group next week at the National NCARB board meeting. It says the leadership from this group, CCCAP, will join the board of directors for an inaugural engagement opportunity. Inaugural engagement, which means that NCARB's never talked to them either. Between the leadership of the two organizations to discuss opportunities and inform the council's exploration into new opportunities along the path to licensure. So not only are they thinking about, here are the things I heard about. I heard that there is some kind of idea about credits from community colleges in actual architectural education into the 4-year programs, number one. Right?
That's exactly what I was referring to.
Right. And number two, this idea of the path to licensure, that's really interesting, especially to California, because we obviously have lots and lots of different paths. So anyway, it's going to be a very interesting discussion. I will definitely, if you put it on the agenda, obviously for my report in December, I'll be glad to update the board on what's happening there. But it sounds kind of interesting to me. Right. Yeah.
So I think it's very good. We want to put on the board agenda, and community college is really one of our folks, the communicating entities. Yeah, but I'm not familiar with. I'm an advisor for the local community college architecture program. I have never heard this organization, so I want to learn more.
Yeah, they have I don't know if they have a board of directors, but they definitely have an executive director and maybe a board chair that's coming next week to meet with us. So we'll find out what's happening with them.
We put on the December agenda. Brett, is this a question for this item? Yeah. You have your hand up.
I just wanted to say to Mitra that I think the committee, based on what you just mentioned, is doing a tremendous job on things that we have discussed in the past to do.
Okay. Good. Any other comments before I open to public comment? I see no hands. Moderator, can we open for public comment on this agenda? Jay.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests.
Yeah, I was originally have a short break so we can accommodate another member of our board that he needs to leave by 1 o'clock, but we're about 1 o'clock anyway. So how about after this public comment period, we will take a recession until 1 o'clock.
All right, and this is the moderator. Appears there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. And we will be in the session until 1 p.m. And hopefully you can have time for a little snack and a quality of life visit to places you need to visit. Okay, we'll see you at 1 o'clock. Looks like we're all back. Let's continue our meeting. And we were on agenda K, Executive Officer's report on various subjects. Laura, are you ready?
Mr. President, we should take roll to confirm we still have a quorum.
Oh, okay. We will do that. Mr. Secretary, can we make another roll call?
No, Mr. Secretary.
Oh,
We have to wait until,
We wait, okay.
yeah, or he may be muted. Let's see.
I thought was a listing was complete. Let me see.
Wait a minute.
Oh, I mean, he could be away from computer.
He is away. I don't see his name right now.
He's there.
Oh, no, there he is.
The
I see
name is
him.
there.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Hi, Brett. You're back.
Hi.
Yeah, Brett, can we call the roll again? We just want to make sure we still have the quorum.
Yes, I'm calling the roll. Tian Feng,
Yeah.
Sunny Ward,
Here.
Rick Gladstone, Ronald Jones. Ronald Jones.
Let me insert Robert. Ron Jones is in transition to airport. He intend to log on whenever he can use his phone, but so don't wait for him.
Mitra Kanani,
Here.
Sylvia Kwan,
Present.
Robert Thurman,
Present.
and Nielsa Serrano. Not here. Okay. So we have a quorum still.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Laura, it's your turn.
Sure. You want me to start on agenda item K? So
K.
this is the quarterly report. I'll just briefly go over the highlights. Let me know if you have any questions.
Okay.
Just to mention, well, we've talked about our budget in detail, so we'll go into that. And business modernization, we're expecting the first release of the project to be available in December of this year. So provide more information as we get closer. And then the project is scheduled to close out in November of 2023. And personnel, I continue to hold the assistant executive officer position vacant for salary savings. We have one other vacancy in licensing. We've completed a licensing 101 video, partnering with DCA, and we're working on a Spanish version. For social media, we did post about the availability of NCARB, the free practice exams that are available for candidates, which is a great feature that's available, so we'll probably highlight it again. Starting on page 3 of the report, there's a summary of our regulatory proposals. I'm not going to go into these in detail. We have some on our agenda, but I want to give many thanks to Karen Halbo, our regulations attorney, Kim McDaniel, who's our reg manager, and all the staff here that work on them. The regulations continue to take up a lot of staff time, so I just want to say my appreciation for everyone for putting that time in. There's also an update on the LATC regulations in the packet as well. And then page 9 of the report, we start with the statistics on the exam pass rates. So for the CSE, for the quarter we're reporting, it was a 75% pass rate. Underneath that, we have ARE data. And then on the following page, we have the comparison data to NCARB, to the ARE for national candidates versus California candidates. And so our candidates continue to be, our pass rates are lower in divisions across the board. And then we have LARE data as well as the CSE for landscape architects. And then on page 12, our enforcement report starts as well as LATCs, so it'll have the total number of complaints as well as our citations. And then we have details on the citations starting on page 14. We're also posting those online. Are there any questions?
I think the first disciplinary case, it didn't mention what the discipline or penalty was.
Is this, are you looking at the citation on page 12? Is that, I mean, page 14, is that the one? Oh, I'm sorry. The administrative action for Zeed and Jones?
Yes.
So the license was revoked, so that was the penalty.
Thank you. I just didn't see that there.
Okay. All right. I don't see any hands. I am going to open to public comment period. 'Cause
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. So the remaining several items are all about regulatory issues. Item L, we will have Karen Hobo to present. It's about.
This is Laura. I apologize for interrupting. We're going to make one change to this one. Kim McDaniel is going to present agenda item L, and then Karen will present the other ones.
Okay. Okay. So Kim, you will do that agenda L. It's regarding retired license application.
Okay, great. Thank you, board president and board members. My name is Kim McDaniel, and I have the pleasure of briefly sharing the status of our retired license regulatory package. This is agenda item L. The 45-day public comment period closed July 19th. And we received 7 comments. And if you open up to agenda item L, you can almost follow along with my comments. We've received 7 comments. 3 were directed at obtaining documents and information about the rulemaking. 1 which expressed concern, and then there were 3 positive comments, 2 of which inquired as to a matter outside the scope of the rulemaking. So board staff reviewed the public comments, and we are not recommending any changes to the proposed regulatory text. And we are asking for your approval to move forward and to finish this proposed rulemaking package. In terms of the comments that we received, one commenter questioned why licensees needed to certify under penalty of perjury, and then question some other language that we felt the Business and Professions Code was really clear about what it means to be an architect. There were several comments made during the public comment period asking about, some of you may recall that there was a short time period where the board had issued retired license at a $300 fee. Okay, and so there were several individuals who asked if they could get a refund, since this particular fee, we will be charging $40. And so Legal Affairs did some research, and we're not able to issue refunds for those. And the detailed explanation is provided in your packet. But in some, the government code indicates that if they've received any kind of benefit, in which they've had a wall certificate, their name has been listed as a retired licensee on the website, and they also have not had to pay biannual renewal fees. And so because of those reasons, the board is not able to issue the refunds that some of the public commenters requested. So at this point, if you have any questions, I'm open to questions, and the action we are asking is for approval of the comments, our response to those public comments, so that we can move forward and close out this reg and get the retired license fee implemented. Thank you. So if there's no questions, maybe we can get someone to move forward the motion.
I'll make that motion. This is Charles Ward.
Okay. I second the motion.
Or do we need to read it into the record?
Sure, I can read it for the record.
Okay, thank you.
It is, the board is asked, upon reviewing and considering the public comments received during the 45-day public comment period, to adopt the proposed responses to the written comments. And I believe we will need to open for public comment if there aren't any questions from the members.
Yeah, moderator, let's open to public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. It looks like we do have a request for comment from Mark Christian. Moment while I find you in the attendee list. All right, Mark, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
And briefly before that, forgive me if I missed it, but who seconded the motion?
Me, yeah.
Forgive me.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Mark Christian with the American Institute of Architects, California, in support of this proposed regulation. We thank the board and the staff for the excellent work on this. Thank you.
That's the only comment. Moderator?
This is a moderator. Appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. We can save the time, start the roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Okay, on that motion, Tian Feng,
Yes.
Sunny Ward,
Yes.
Gladstone, yes. Ronald Jones? Ronald?
Remember, he's
Not in yet. He's
Oh, that's right, he's not back yet. Mitra Kanani?
Yes.
Sylvia Kwan?
yes.
Robert Pearman?
Aye.
Okay. We have a majority.
Thank you. We now move to next agenda, another regulation, agenda M, and we will have Karen Hobo to present that. It's regarding, we talked many times, it's a finalized disability accessibility, access continuing education regulation.
Thank you, Board President and board members. I'm Karen Halbo, and I'm the Regulations Counsel to the board. And the Disability Access Continuing Education regulation package. We got comments in, and in reviewing them, the staff felt that they were reasonable comments in terms of clarity, because the language in the regulation was saying that it sounded like they were saying people who attended a live presentation who didn't take a test wouldn't get a certificate. And that's not what was intended to be conveyed. And you can look at it and read it one way or the other, but it shouldn't be able to be read that way. So we realized, okay, we need to make a change to the text to clarify this. And in doing that, we've got two packages simultaneously going with continuing education requirements. And I realized this was an opportunity to line it up with how it's worded in the zero net carbon language. So that's why there's a few more changes than just that one clarification, was to trying to make these two areas be close enough that if they look at one and they look at the other, it's like, yeah, more or less the same language. So, and that is in the packet. And just for clarity, because I know regulation text, when you've got double strike throughs and you're on your second modification, which does happen not infrequently for boards, is hard to read. We put in the modified text with the highlighted changes, and then on the last page, we did a clean version so you could read it and see what it looks like in the end with those modifications. So what we have for the board to consider, and I hope you've already read the comments and considered them, we have the proposed responses to comments and the second modified text. And we would ask you to vote to both accept the proposed responses by staff and to accept circulating the second modified text. This package was originally published on November 12th of last year, and the notice lasts for a year. So we would send out this 15-day modification right away, and then if there are no comments, move forward with completing the package. If there are comments, there may be a problem getting the package completed within the 1-year period. But it's a very limited change, and we only need to respond and deal with comments if there is a complaint about this. And since it came from a complaint of your licensees and it's clearer now, I'm hoping there won't be any problem. But I do want to mention to the board that we are on a 1-year notice period from the 12th of November. And so we would move quickly to distribute the second modified text and put in the final documents if the board votes to accept the modified text and the proposed responses.
So I read it. I think it's met and reflects the intent of all the conversations and suggestions. But I like to hear particularly our members who has a legal background before we open for public comment. So Brett and Robert, any concerns on the wording and language?
Nothing special here. It appears they were trying to be responsive and inclusive of the relevant comments.
No, I don't have any changes. I think the members of the public brought up some good points that the staff addressed.
If that's the case, any other members wish to weigh in before I make a motion? So I don't see a hand. So I will move the motion forward. Do I need a precise wording for it? I guess maybe Laura, you can.
Is there one or two motions here?
Two separate ones. The second one's for the circulation of public comment.
Okay, great.
Do you want me to read the motion?
Yeah, why not? It's better because of perhaps very specific terms. Yeah, could you help?
Sure. The board is asked to consider a motion to approve the proposed modified text amending 16 CCR section 165 for a 15-day public comment period. And if no adverse comments are received during the 15-day public comment period, delegate to the executive officer the authority to adopt the proposed modified text, and also delegate to the executive officer the authority to make any technical or non-substantive changes to the proposed modified text that may be required in completing the rulemaking file and adopting the proposed regulatory changes.
Anyone want to second?
I'll second, Chairman.
Okay. I moved, Robert Pearman second. I would like to open up for public comment, and I expect there are public comments.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. And it looks like we have a request for comment from Mark Christian. And Mark, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Mark Christian, AI California. We support the modified text and the amendment, and we thank staff for modifying the text to address the comments it received to make the reach of the text, reach of the regulation more clear to understand. Thank you.
Any other comment?
This is the moderator. Appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Again, to save time, Mr. Secretary, we can call for the vote.
Okay, Tian Feng?
Yes.
Sunny Ward?
Yes.
Rick Gladstone? Yes. Ronald Jones?
Not on yet.
Mitra Kanani?
Yes.
Sylvia Kwan?
Yes.
Robert Kerman?
Yes.
Thank you. We have a majority.
Okay. Now we move to motion 2. This is about the process. So the board is asked upon reviewing and considering the public comments which they offered, received during the 15 days public comments period, to adopt the proposed responses to the written comments. So I will also move this motion. Anyone want a second?
I'll second.
Yeah, okay.
So I moved, Sylvia Kwan second. And we can now open for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, you can close the Q&A panel and we can call for a vote.
Okay. We ready for a vote?
Yeah.
Okay. Tian Feng.
Yes.
Sunny Ward.
Yes.
Rick Gladstone, yes. Ronald Jones, still not there. Beecher Konani.
Yes.
Sylvia Kwan.
Yes.
Robert Kerman.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. So the next item was placeholder. It's a poll, so we don't need to take any action. And the item follow that is item O, which is discuss and a possible action on modify the proposed regulatory text for another regulation, CCR Title 6, Division 2, Article 5, Section 135, public presentment and advertising requirement, and the proposed response to public comment, which, if you recall, was heavily discussed about requirement for architects put their license number in their advertisement related media. So we'd like have Karen Hobart to present the revisions first, and then we want open. Well, we will discuss further if needed, and we want open for public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Board President and board members. This proposed regulation was published at the end of December of 2021. So we are in the 1-year notice period. And after the end of December of this year, then if you wanted to proceed with this, you'd have to start all over. There were many comments received. I know this has been circulated in your materials, and the board had a lot of issues and questions, and you've gotten a lot of feedback, and the board needs to decide what to do. And if you want to put it off, sometimes not to decide is to decide, and that's also an option. The staff had originally prepared responses to comments as if the board wanted to proceed, and walked through summarizing the comments and responding with rationale for proceeding forward, and tried to list all of the proposed alternatives. And I think I may have said this before, I certainly have said it to staff, that architects are creative souls, because I have not seen so many interesting and varied responses that needed to be noted, called out, and then responded to for ways they thought you could achieve the accomplishments or the goal of this regulation. And it is simply adding the license number to presentments and advertisements. And that's been done with a number of other licensing boards with DCA. And it is for the board to discuss and consider all of the feedback and decide whether you wish to move forward. We tried to make modifications. Staff proposed modified text to clarify and respond to some of the comments, but for many of the comments, they were against the whole idea. So modified text isn't going to make them happy. They don't want it to move forward. So there was a lot of material, and I know you guys have looked through it carefully. And so I would ask you to discuss and let me know what you want to do. And if you need to do a motion, then do it. But this is in your hands to decide. And it's been moved over a few meetings now. And that's a lot of public comments to keep getting reprinted for your review.
So if I could, since I can be the person first to raise the hand, I think the regulation was developed with good intent. Again, the core business of us is consumer protection. And I recall the conversations about other boards and have that practice. And even our own subcommittee, Landscape Architects Board, Technical Committee, adopted a similar regulation. And they deems there's a value for consumer protection. And so largely for the consistency of our policy making and board thought with the logic things looking into should we have similar regulations such as this apply to architects. And in the span of 1 year, we really have very substantial discussions and hear tremendous of feedback that I'm very impressed by the members of architects from the community of California architects have strongly reacted to it. So my overall personal observation is the regulation has good intent and particular reference to other boards has practiced this for years. But at also same time, for the cases that we reviewed, we voted on, we studied, we informed, we have not seen many, if at all, that is related that consumers' benefit was harmed because the licensing number of an architect was not initially on the printed or any presentment form. So, so there is a question there. Are we address some concerns for consumer protection and without yet to a need or currently see a need for it? So that is a honest question contemplating in my mind. So with that said, I like to open to our board members if you have any new thoughts, different opinions than mine. And I like really hear from public members as well, because they have been spending time with us on multiple meetings, including today. I believe many of them are here spending their valuable time to share with us their perspective. So with that said, any board members want to share your observations, comments?
Tian, this is Laura. If I could just make one comment before you go to the board members. Just in response to something you said, just for clarification, certainly up to the board members what they want to do today. But you mentioned that the cases the board members see you don't see much with advertising. And that's because those types of complaints, which are a lot of what we get, are dealt with through letters of advisement or potentially citations. And those generally aren't the kind of cases that are go to appeal and that the board is going to act on.
Okay, that's fair.
Sure. Okay, shall I go, Tian?
Yes, go ahead. I see your hand.
Yeah, I thought just the one I remember, but the comment I remember is from a guy named Jim Zach, I believe. And it was interesting because he said, I'm an architect and I'm a contractor. And he said, I'm used to the contractor having to put their license on everything because I guess there have been so many complaints about contractors in the past and their legitimacy or whatever. So they've been living with that for a really long time. But he says, I'm really perplexed as how to handle it as an architect, because even I'm a contractor / architectural firm, I guess like the design build firm. And he said, there's 3 or 4 licensed architects in my firm, and I guess I have to put my license up, but should it be me? I don't know who to put. And you know, so the multi-architect companies are really, really in a bind as to what to do. And I think it's become so difficult. And most of the communication I read from the architects really say, listen, it's CAB's responsibility. You know, you post it on your website, who is licensed, whoever needs to go to find out will find out very easily. You don't have to put a license, but you know, on their business card or whatever. You have to put it on the website for the public to be able to verify. So based on that and, you know, the multitude of comments, I really think that we should decide on sort of resting that or putting away this issue once and for all.
Thank you, Sylvia. Robert.
Yeah, I think the staff did a good job in responding again to the comments. As been stated before, consumer protection, you know, I think is our goal, and we have to strike a balance sometime. But I think the burden, if you would, on the architect community is not something that overweights the consumer protection. As you mentioned, other occupations do it, even our own section of the landscape architects. So it's fine. I particularly like the changes that the staff made, not only with the implementation date, but modifying the language to make it clear about the things that really don't encompass advertising, but it's really in connection with an offer to provide services. So I think that makes a key difference here. You know, there's a saying, don't let the perfect get in the way of the good. And while there may be some things that have to be worked out, we have the ability to do that through our enforcement procedures. If the worst thing is that people can't figure out or worry about whose license number to put on the ads, I mean, is that really seems childish to say kill the whole thing because of that minor issue about which person's license to use, be over-inclusive if you're concerned. You mentioned the need. The need is, as stated by Laura, from what they see, and we know there are a lot of unlicensed people out there posed as architects. So nothing in the suggestions really gives us a direct route to otherwise protecting consumers. So I think we've dealt with this long enough. And let's put it out there and join the chorus of other occupations that have found this viable and not somehow destructive to the protection.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Sunny.
Thank you. This is Sunny. I appreciate Tian's brief history of this. My feelings about it, as I listened to him speak, pretty much paralleled the sort of evolution. I remember when I first started, the landscape was just passing, and I remember I stuck my foot in my mouth a little bit because I just couldn't formulate how I really felt about it and could wrap my head around it. But as we've spent time talking about this over the past, well, even back, if you go back to then, multiple years, I realized that I haven't seen the evidence that this will protect the consumer. I do realize that there are citations that are given for people who are holding themselves out as not being architects, but the regulations that sort of catch them with the disputes with their clients would still be in place even with this. And I also realize that we don't have the resources, and I hate to say this out loud, to do this, to do these, like, we don't have someone out there looking for these people that are already holding themselves out as architects. And this will not change that. This will simply put something on the books that will, in some ways, it could become like a revengeful thing with people who are architects who are abiding by the law, who are licensed, who are paying their fees, who are taking their education courses, and simply making honest mistakes and leaving their license number off of places and then would become trapped in this and become part of their permanent record. So therefore, I disagree with this. My vote on this today will be no, or I would vote to table this.
Okay, thank you for your openness. Brett, did you have your hands on, Brett?
No, I didn't have my hands up.
Okay. I would, if no other board members like speak for now, I like open up for public comment. We can always come back, discuss a little more before we take action. Our lawyer, is that okay? Our counsel, can I open up for public comment?
Certainly, Mr. President.
Okay. Moderator, please open up for the public comment.
Is the moderator there?
Yeah.
Hi, Mr. President, board members, Mark Christian with AI California. The moderator's microphone must be off, but I was given the opportunity to unmute, so I did. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this important issue. The AI California still questions how this will protect the consumer. It does not stop unlicensed people from advertising on Craigslist that they provide residential architectural drawings or whatever else they are offering, but it will impose a new requirement on licensed architects and subjecting licensed architects to disciplinary action. And as board member Ward said, adding it to the record and perhaps affecting their ability to get work in the future. The law already requires an architect, when offering services, when contracting for services, to include their license number. Most people probably who hire architects are very sophisticated clients and have hired those architects or other architects in the past. So this does not benefit consumers from unlicensed activity. Putting a new requirement on architects does not protect the consumers from unlicensed activity, and that causes us great concern. And I think it's important to recognize the difference between contractors and architects. The Contractors Licensing Board regularly holds sting operations with law enforcement officers to arrest unlicensed people offering contracting services because there is a demonstrable and identifiable harm to consumers, or consumers will pay money for services and no services are performed. Consumers are harmed, so therefore the Contractors Board and the law for them, the regulations for them, needs to be a bit different. There is no similar environment for architects. The California Architects Board, to the best of my knowledge, has never held a sting operation with law enforcement officers to arrest people. It's apples and oranges, and I think it's okay to recognize that. And of course, this is not a comment on licensed contractors. This is a comment on those who are not licensed, who are trying to scam consumers in need of contracting work. I assume my time is getting close. For those reasons, we still have concerns with this proposal, and I would respectfully ask that it be allowed to not happen, to be allowed to not proceed. Thank you.
This is the moderator. You would.
Moderator, I think you have.
This is Laura. I think we're having some technical difficulties with the moderator. If we can just hold on for a moment, we'll see if we can get it fixed.
is public know they can, they can speak?
It is open for comment, but I can't tell if anyone else asked. It looks like we do have an additional person who wants to speak. So if we can just wait a moment, we'll see if we can get it.
Mark has experience noting when he can unmute himself, and whoever this person is may be able to unmute themselves and not know that.
Can public unmute themselves?
I don't think this person can. They're not a participant. They're an attendee. So I don't believe they have the ability to unmute themselves.
It was just Sarah's mic wasn't working and she was able to give Mr. Christensen an availability to speak. And I was wondering if she could still do that.
Yeah, maybe if she has.
Okay, it looks like, sorry to interrupt, it's Janice Kent. She would like, I think she's unmuted, so she has the ability to speak. Remember, there is a 2-minute warning or a 2-minute limit for a public comment. We'll give a 30-second warning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Of course, my phone rings soon as I get to speak. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. You know, I see that some of the language was rewritten and it is more specific and clear. We got rid of some of the wishy-washy language, particularly when we're talking about large firms on how they can proceed with that. But we get back to the same issue, the same intent that is really, should this be applicable to us as architects? We put our license number on contracts. We put it on proposals and agreements and on work products. That's when someone hires us. We need to put it there. I don't see any issue with that. But putting it on anything else, nothing else has changed from when we initially brought this up. It does not belong, as far as I'm concerned, on my website. It doesn't belong on my blog articles. It does not belong on the book that I'm having printed under my name where I have the word architect after it. I don't consider those things advertising. I'm not even sure what you mean advertising. To me, advertising is when you pay for something. But again, I get back to that we are similar to other professionals. We're similar to attorneys. We're similar to CPAs, architects. Those are the classic professions. I don't see any of the cards I have from attorneys or CPAs having their number on it. It is just does not feel correct. It is not at the same category as what I would expect if I'm hiring a contractor. It's different. And I would say that this is just really not appropriate. We do put it where it is necessary. So we do put our license number where it is necessary. I don't think these other things should be. It's too much in the public domain, and it's already there for the public, if they're savvy enough to look it up to see our license status. So I think that's my 2 minutes, right?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. How we proceed with that?
Is public closed?
I don't believe there are any other requests for public comment that I can see.
Thank you.
So
Yes,
if we
this
can
is-
close public comment.
Yes, this is your temporary moderator. We see no other raised hands or comments.
Okay,
I'll close the
very
comment
good.
now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Very good. Okay, we come back to the board members. Before I want maybe share with you my intent. If I will lead the group, I want lead to vote to table this regulation indefinitely until we see indication, a reason that having this regulation can act on immediately protecting the consumer welfare.
John, this is Laura. Just to clarify, if the motion is tabled, it will it'll be dead because we would need to restart it if the board ever wanted to move forward with it. So it's not going to be temporarily. It is to drop the proposal completely, which is, if that's the board's direction, I'd like to see some action one way or the other.
So I could say maybe that's the consequence because of timing. The bill, the regulation may have to restart. That's the potential impact or
Yes,
risk.
if the board wanted to move forward with it at a later date, they would have to restart. But given the amount of time that went into this one, I don't think that we would be interested in doing that unless that's what the board directs.
Brett, is this your hand just raised?
Yes, it is.
You go ahead.
Well, as many of you know from my remarks at the last commission hearing, I still agree with Robert Pearman. I know it's ironic that the two lawyers on the board, non-architects, seem to feel the same way, and that the architects feel differently. I just wanted to point out that, lawyers, unlike contractors and architects, don't have public safety as part of their practice. As annoying as lawyers may be and disturb the public, we don't have public safety as part of our practice. And trend is to have those involved in public safety to have the license numbers. At the last meeting, I suggested a bunch of compromises with the intent that the parties that are most likely to be taken advantage of are consumers, homeowners, and that consumers, homeowners are more likely than any other kind of owner to on the basis of social media. And so it was my suggestion that we not treat this as yes or no, but we have a compromise proposal come forward that involved requiring license numbers on social media outreach, because I think that's where the consumer is most vulnerable. However, I don't see enough board members who have felt my compromises to be appropriate. And I think at this point, it may not be a good use of our board time to continue to debate this. And I realize at this point that any compromise language that we come up with probably wouldn't be drafted and approved by us in time for our last meeting of the year. So it may be just irrelevant and not necessary to go in that direction. But I did want to point out that I do share Robert Pearman's thoughts on this.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have comments too, but I want to go after Robert and Sunny. Robert, go ahead.
First, Laura, if we were to vote on this at the December meeting, would that be timely, or would it have been dead by then?
Karen, can you remind me at the December meeting, would we be too late on this?
Well, if you want to keep it alive, we wouldn't have time after the December meeting to circulate the modified text for 15 days and then be able to submit the final documents before December 31st.
Okay, thank you.
But I have had other boards that say no to this, we want to move forward with this. So if you could have a motion instructing staff to research social media if you wanted. That's just because you stop this doesn't mean you can't go in a different direction. But this one, we are getting closer to the deadline, and I don't think we can do the 15-day.
Thank you.
So you're saying if we vote on this exact language in December, it still would be too late, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Right. There's a year deadline for when we file the package with OAL, and so we wouldn't be able to meet that. And Karen's right that the board can direct staff to work on something else, but this proposal came out of a strategic plan objective looking at social media, and when we couldn't really deal with we couldn't directly address the objective about working with companies about their posting and having them required to put the license number on the advertisements. That's how we came up with this, partly how we came up with this proposal. So this was an alternative.
Yeah, I share the observation of Brett that essentially, the public members agree with this, and it's the architects who are opposed. And if we had our full complement of board members, including maybe 2 other public members, it might be a different result. So that kind of disturbs me, that just the mere happenstance of who's here leads us not to adopt something. But I would certainly want to, make a motion, Ken, if you decide that the vote's on there. I'd like to, before you finish, I would like to make the motion, so I'd be on record that I made the motion at least, because I think it's a mistake, and I think in 2 years the legislature may force something like this, and you may not like a lot less what they give everybody.
Yeah. Okay. I will keep that in mind. Sunny.
Thanks. I just wanted to remind everyone that the Architects Board has jurisdiction over licensed architects only. So unlicensed individuals, we don't have jurisdiction over. So the irony of something like this is that a licensed card-paying member of the California Architects Board would be the only person that could be fined by this this item.
Okay. So here's my thoughts. We are a board for consumer protections, and for consumer protections with reasons, with evidence, there's a need. Our current assumed need is because the parallel to other board has utilized that device as a means of enhancement to consumer protection. But we can also align at the same time, make parallel to us, our profession to medical professionals, for example. Have you ever meet a doctor, a dentist that has their license published on any means, any medias at all? So, and how much of consumer protection has been weakened by that practice that doctors and physicians does not have their license printed on their media. So in other words, we have I hope we have some objectivities to judge when we don't have quite the evidence yet that the need is there, and we are only use parallel reference, and we can reference different professions. So that I also ask the board members to think about that when we decide to vote on our action. And if unnecessary burden to a profession is not itself could be detrimental to consumer protection, because you want to create a win-win situation that both providers and receivers that feel we are doing something constructive to both sides. The point that Robert Pearman summarized touches me more heavily is in procedure-wise, in physical presence today of this meeting, architects member seems outnumbered non-public members, that when we conduct a vote in this environment, I may feel have some obligations to think about that aspects. It just literally, public members are, two public members are not here. Yes, Sunny.
To that I respond, and I hear what you're saying, but I'd just like to remind you that this particular agenda item and this proposal is not the only way that the California architects can protect consumers. So the tabling of this or the defeat of this does not keep this board from continuing to fight for consumer protections. And I feel like we're all here to do that, or otherwise we wouldn't be here. But there are many creative things that we could do that would not be this kind of innocent parking ticket moneymaker on licensed, law-abiding, practicing architects in the state of California.
Okay, thank you. Mitra, you have your hand raised. Mitra. If you are talking, you need to unmute.
Sorry, I was mute. Yeah, I was saying I have a mixed feeling about this. Going from one to the other, back and forth, based on various conversations. I have a difficulty, unless someone wants to explain this to me, for the meaning of consumers' protection. To me, what we are discussing about is not about protection of consumers. It's about, and I mentioned that yesterday to Laura when we were talking about it on the phone, to me, this is more about convenience. So if we are putting our license number on a marketing document, this is not about protection. In fact, we are giving maybe some of our own protection away. But at the same time, I'm not saying that to be for the protection of public or consumers, because if they are interested in our marketing, in our whatever we have disseminated about ourselves, if it catches their eye and attention and interest, then they can pursue and get more information about us and our validity, and of course our identity more than what we have announced. It's something to me that it's being playful with the meanings, to me, what we are discussing right now. Protection versus giving away, not giving away, but basically making it more convenient for the public. Unless someone wants to explain this to me, that I'm missing something in the midst of this, I would appreciate that.
No, that's an interesting perspective. It's that the protection level is actually only at the convenience.
Convenience,
beyond.
Exactly.
Okay, that's interesting perspective. Brett, you have your hand again. I like to move forward with this after your comment.
Yeah, I think one thing I mentioned last time that I don't think I was very clear on is the following. As a real estate lawyer, I deal with a lot of people who use contractors. And by the way, I don't do litigation, so I don't sue contractors or anybody. And some of my best friends are contractors. Sorry, but as cliche as that sounds, but I do have many clients over the decades have said, gee, I got this proposal from a contractor and he didn't have his license number on it, or I'm thinking of going with this contractor, but his advertisement doesn't have his license number on it. And that means that over the course of time, the consumer has gotten used to the fact that a licensed architect a licensed contractor has his license number on there. And so it triggers something in their mind to say, I should ask my lawyer, I should look this up. And so it's always been my hope that with this regulation, that over time, it become the course and practice, it become in the mind of consumers that, and again, I'm particularly thinking of the consumer who's having a home renovation or a new home, that there's something wrong when a license number doesn't appear next to the architect's name. And this is not about handing out tickets and creating another reason to discipline architects. But for me, it's to establish a course and practice in the mind of the public.
Okay.
And just finally, I think it protects architects who are licensed if people start to believe, as I would hope, that a licensed architect has a license number next to his name. And that protects the licensed architects vis-a-vis the unlicensed architects. And that's about all. Thank you.
Okay, I want to thank everyone for a very thoughtful discussion and observations and all the participating public. I do make a business decision, move forward with a vote, and the board can always reverse today's vote if we put the same agenda for next meeting. So even in light, we missed 2 public members. So my motion would be to table this regulation indefinite.
Tian, this is Laura. I thought that Robert made a motion earlier, but I might have misunderstood.
Oh, the Robert want me make sure let him make a motion during the motion time. Robert, right?
Yeah, but I mean, if you're going to do it that way, I think my point is made either way. But go ahead and make your motion first, chair's prerogative.
But if I make this motion, can you include in your motion or your discussion in intent to modify my motion? For example, I prevent your voice by my motion.
No, well, we'll see how your motion gets voted on.
Okay. So I propose to table this regulation indefinite until board find a more appropriate time to adopt such a regulation.
I just have a point of clarification on this motion. Is the indefinite qualification necessary, or are we just tabling this?
You just need to table the motion. It's not indefinite.
Just say the good comment, Sunny. I would withdraw. Just say table this.
I think we need a vote on that.
We need a discussion, and we want to open for public, and then we take a vote.
We need a second.
I second it.
We need a second first.
I second it.
Okay, I made a motion to table this regulation, and Sunny second. And any discussions? I see now we discussed enough, I think, and we will open for public comment.
Do we need public comment again? They already commented.
Council, should we open for public comment again?
Yes, we need comment on the motion itself.
Okay, thank you.
This is the moderator, and we've opened for public comment. If you would like to make a comment, you may use the Q&A feature of WebEx, which is a question mark, typically in the lower right corner of your computer screen, or you may raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon and next to your name or at the bottom of your computer screen. If you are a call-in user, you may press *3 to raise your hand. And we do have one raised hand from someone logged in as Janice Kent. Janice, I'll send you a request to unmute your microphone. You're unmuted.
Am I unmuted now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just want to summarize this. I agree in terms of the consumer protection. I totally agree with that. And I think that's something that we need to look into. But I do not think that this will give the consumers the protection they need. I think we need to look at it totally differently and in a different manner, because I don't see this doing that. And that's basically what I wanted to say. I mean, they do need protection. Some people hire people who are not licensed, not only with buildings, but with other things. But let's find another way to make it real so it'll really work, rather than, and it is punishing architects. By even putting off half a year, I'm still spending the money to reprint everything. I still have a ton of questions. We don't need to do that. We need to make it work for everyone. That's it.
Any other comments?
I do not see any other comments. Shall I close the Q&A feature?
Yes.
Thank you.
Please close. Robert, looks like we cannot discuss anymore. We're going to move forward with the vote.
That's fine.
Okay.
Fine.
Okay. Mr. Secretary, well, let's call for a vote.
Okay, on that motion to table, Ken Feng,
Yes.
Sunny Ward,
Yes.
Rick Gladstone, no. Ron Jones,
Wait, Ron, you might be there. Ron, I was hoping he can participate.
Ron Jones is still not available.
Still not. Okay.
Mitra Kanani. Mitra,
Yes.
Sylvia Kwan,
Yes.
Robert Payman.
No.
The vote is 4 yes and 2 no.
So, Mr. President, this is your legal counsel. That motion fails. The your Practice Act, and I'll quote the section for you. It's Business and Professions Code section 5524 requires the concurrence of 5 members to constitute an act. So that motion fails.
5 members on the total board, not attendees. So we didn't know. Yeah. So how do we classify this motion? Motion failed or invalid?
That's correct. The motion fails.
So what do we do? Do we vote again at another board meeting?
Yeah, it seems to me that all we can do is bring it up again, and if we vote for the staff recommendation, then we can see if they can rush it through in time for the December 31st deadline. Obviously, if we continue to follow Tien's path, then it becomes moot at that time. But clearly, we don't have 5 votes to support the staff action, so there's no sense even wasting our time having a second vote, it seems to me.
Right.
Okay. So Laura, looks like we need to put this again on a December agenda.
I look forward to it.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
All right. Thank you so much. And this is the major items, and the remaining just a quick old business or new business. Laura, you want survey the dates? And then I can, by the way, today we do not have closed session, so we can adjourn the meeting after discuss about the December meeting.
Yeah, so we have our future meeting dates in the packet. November 1st, LATC is meeting. They're meeting in person at UC Davis. And then we have the board meeting scheduled for December 9th. We haven't decided on the format yet, so Tian and I have talked about doing an in-person meeting. At this point, I think with the capabilities we have in terms of webcasting and doing WebEx, we either need to meet all in person if we want to meet at a remote location like a university, or if we want to do a hybrid meeting format, it needs to be, one of the locations needs to be at DCA. And then it worked when we used Sunny's office and he was able to do that setup, but we don't have any IT support from the department if we're going to use another remote location. So, there's just the concern about if we meet somewhere else and use that as one of our locations, if there's any kind of connectivity issues, what that does to our meeting. So I can survey the members after this to verify the date and see what format works best for everybody.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a comment?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think we've had thanks to COVID and also in the last year where we've been meeting, we haven't had a meeting in the Bay Area for years now. I wonder if we could talk to staff about setting up something at a university in the Bay Area.
Yes,
that was
plan.
the plan. We had one in May.
I want to point out, I just went to San Francisco for a meeting that a lot of you guys didn't show up to.
Yeah, we had travel costs for that one. That was unfortunate for members' time. We talked about doing Stanford for the December meeting, which is we can look at travel options for that. So that's in the Bay Area, but yeah, we can look at different options, what works best for people if we want to meet in person.
Brett, the challenge is the technical difficulties that DCA has. So we will continue visit that, and Laura will survey the members. Any other topics? Before I adjourn the meeting? Everyone's okay? All right. So it's 2:13, and we are adjourned our September 16th meeting, and we will meet again in December. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It would be good to do a holiday meeting again, which we haven't done in 3 years.
We'll try. Yeah.
We'll try. Okay.
We'll try. Okay. Thank you again.
Thank you for a great meeting. Good
Thank
job, you guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.